Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm reading Reddit stories for you to relax, sleep, study too, or just to have it as some background noise. If you enjoy, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And now let's get started. Story 1. I'm a 28-year-old psychology PhD student, and I made the worst decision of my academic career. 2 years ago, I designed an unofficial social experiment about online dating deception. I created a fake profile, catfished someone, documented everything for my research. It was unethical and stupid, and I knew it at the time. But I convinced myself it was for science, and that I'd reveal the truth before any real harm was done. I was wrong on every count. What started as academic curiosity became a nightmare that destroyed multiple lives, and I'm still dealing with the fallout. It started innocuously enough. I was working on my dissertation about authenticity in digital relationships. How do people present themselves online versus reality? What happens when those presentations diverge significantly? I'd been interviewing people, running surveys, analyzing data, but I felt like I needed deeper insight. I wanted to understand the catfisher's perspective and the victim's experience firsthand. So I decided to become a catfisher. Just temporarily. Just for research. Just to understand the psychology. Every terrible decision starts with just. I created a profile on a dating app using photos of a model I found on Instagram. I'll call her Melissa, since that was the fake name I used. The real person whose photos I stole had a private account and only a few hundred followers. I figured the chances of getting caught were minimal. I made Melissa seem perfect, attractive, successful marketing executive, interesting hobbies, adventurous. The kind of person who gets tons of matches, but I could claim was selective and serious about finding someone real. I matched with dozens of people, but I was looking for a specific type. Someone who seemed genuine, emotionally available, ready for a real relationship. Someone who would invest emotionally, so I could study the progression of digital intimacy. I found him pretty quickly. His name was Marcus. 30 years old, engineer, recently moved to my city for work. His profile was honest and straightforward. Good photos, but not professionally staged. Bio that was sincere without trying too hard. He seemed perfect for my purposes. We started chatting. I maintained the Melissa character carefully. Flirty, but not too forward. Interested, but not desperate. I mirrored his communication style and reciprocated his emotional investment at the same pace he offered it. Classic rapport building. We texted constantly for 2 weeks. He asked to meet in person multiple times. I always had an excuse. Work trip, family emergency, not feeling well. I was documenting everything. His persistence, his disappointment, how he handled rejection. It was fascinating data. Then it got more complicated. Marcus started really opening up emotionally. He told me about his difficult childhood, his struggles with anxiety, his fears about not finding someone. He was vulnerable in ways people rarely are with strangers, and I reciprocated with Melissa's manufactured vulnerabilities. Fake childhood trauma, fake career struggles, fake fears that paralleled his. I was building intimacy through strategic disclosure. It was manipulative and wrong, but I told myself it was temporary. A month in, Marcus said he was falling for me. For Melissa. He'd never felt this connected to someone. He understood we hadn't met in person yet, but the emotional connection was real and rare. Could we please meet for coffee? He needed to see if the physical chemistry matched the emotional chemistry. I panicked. I'd planned to end the experiment around this point, reveal the truth, apologize, use the data for my dissertation. But something stopped me. Maybe curiosity about how far it would go. Maybe ego, about how well my experiment was working, maybe just cowardice about confronting what I'd done. I told him I'd meet him next week. I had no intention of meeting him, obviously, but I needed an exit strategy that wouldn't expose the catfish immediately. I decided Melissa would get cold feet and ghost him. Cruel, but cleaner than the alternatives. Except before I could execute the ghost, something unexpected happened. Marcus told his best friend about Melissa, and his best friend's girlfriend recognized the photos. The real woman whose pictures I'd stolen was her cousin. The whole thing exploded. The friend confronted Marcus with proof that Melissa wasn't real. Marcus was devastated and confused. He tried to contact me for an explanation. I didn't respond. I deleted the profile and figured it was over. A messy ending, but contained. Except it wasn't over. Not even close. Marcus, trying to understand what happened and why, started investigating. He's an engineer, and apparently good with data. He traced digital breadcrumbs back to me. My real me. He figured out my real identity through a combination of metadata, writing style analysis, and digital forensics I didn't know were possible. He found my professional academic profile, saw that I was a psychology PhD student studying digital relationships, put together that I'd catfished him as research. He showed up at my university, confronted me in person, demanded an explanation. I had no good answers. I admitted everything. The fake profile, the manufactured intimacy, the experiment. I apologized profusely. He was destroyed, angry and hurt, and betrayed on levels I hadn't anticipated. Marcus reported me to the University Ethics Board. Academic research requires informed consent and ethical review. I'd conducted human subjects research without either. I'd violated every ethical guideline our field has. The investigation was brutal. I had to provide all my documentation, explain my methodology, justify my decisions. I couldn't justify them. What I'd done was indefensible. The board recommended suspension and potential expulsion from the PhD program. My advisor dropped me. My career was over before it started. But the professional consequences were just the beginning. Marcus was genuinely traumatized by the experience. He'd been vulnerable with someone who was completely fake. He'd fallen for an illusion I'd carefully constructed. He started therapy to deal with the betrayal and his difficulty trusting anyone. The therapist diagnosed him with complicated grief and betrayal trauma. Marcus blamed me for his inability to date or trust anyone. He wasn't wrong. I'd broken something in him. Then it got worse. The real woman whose photos I'd used found out. Someone had seen the fake profile before I deleted it and told her. She was horrified. Her images had been used without permission to deceive someone. She worried about her reputation and safety. What if Marcus or others thought she was the catfish? What if her likeness was still being used elsewhere? She threatened to sue me for identity theft and emotional distress. My lawyer said she had a case. The story somehow made it to social media. Not full details, but enough. Local Twitter was discussing the psychology PhD student who'd catfished someone as research. People were outraged. I was getting death threats, doxing attempts. My photo and information were being shared with warnings about me. I became a cautionary tale about unethical research and manipulative academics. My reputation in the psychology community was destroyed. Nobody would hire me now, even if I managed to finish my degree. My family found out through the social media exposure. They were disappointed and confused. My mom asked why I'd do something so cruel. My dad said he didn't recognize the person I'd become. My sister stopped talking to me entirely. I'd embarrassed them and damaged our family name in our academic community. Both my parents are professors. Their colleagues were asking about their daughter who'd conducted unethical research. The shame was unbearable. I lost my funding. The university revoked my research assistantship and teaching positions. I'd been getting a stipend to work and study. That had disappeared immediately. I had to get a job outside academia to pay rent and legal fees. I ended up working retail for the first time since high school, standing behind a counter, ringing up purchases, while people occasionally recognized me as that unethical researcher from Twitter. The humiliation was crushing. My mental health collapsed. Depression, anxiety, insomnia, the works. I destroyed my career and hurt people and become a pariah. I started therapy myself. The therapist helped me understand that my experiment came from a place of intellectual arrogance and emotional disconnection. I'd treated Marcus as a research subject instead of a human being. I'd prioritized data over dignity. I'd convinced myself the ends justified the means. Classic rationalization for unethical behavior. I tried to make amends. I wrote Marcus a long apology letter, taking full responsibility and expressing genuine remorse. He sent it back unopened. I tried to apologize to the woman whose photos I'd used. She told me through her lawyer to never contact her again. I wrote to the ethics board accepting all consequences and apologizing for bringing shame to the institution. They appreciated the acknowledgement, but the damage was done. There was no redemption arc, just consequences. 6 months after everything exploded, I was still dealing with fallout. The lawsuit from the photo victim was moving forward. My legal bills were mounting. The university had officially expelled me from the PhD program. My academic career was over. I was working full-time retail and adjunct teaching online courses under a modified name to make ends meet. I'd gone from promising researcher to cautionary tale in less than a year, all because of one monumentally stupid decision. Then I found out about the other victims. Marcus's best friend, the one whose girlfriend recognized the photos, apparently blamed himself for not catching the catfish earlier. He fell into a depression. His relationship suffered because he was so focused on helping Marcus deal with the trauma. They eventually broke up. So, that's 2 relationships damaged. Marcus's mental health issues made him lose his job due to performance problems. So, that's a career damaged. The ripple effects kept spreading. The girlfriend who recognized the photos felt guilty for exposing the situation. She wondered if she should have kept quiet and let it play out. Her cousin, the real woman whose photos were used, developed anxiety about her image being online. She deleted most of her social media and became paranoid about her photos being stolen again. These were real people with real damage, all stemming from my supposedly controlled experiment. I started researching catfishing more thoroughly. Ironically, the psychology of it, the damage it causes, the long-term effects on victims. Everything I should have researched before doing it myself. Catfishing victims often develop trust issues, anxiety, depression, difficulty forming new relationships. Some develop PTSD-like symptoms. The betrayal goes deep because it's multifaceted. The deception, the manipulation, the revelation that someone they cared about never existed. It's identity theft and emotional abuse combined. Reading about the typical damage, I realized Marcus's reaction was normal, and I'd underestimated the harm I'd cause. I thought revealing the truth early would prevent serious damage. I thought a month wasn't long enough for real attachment. I thought apologizing would help. I was wrong on every count. A month of intensive daily communication and emotional vulnerability is plenty of time to form attachment. Revealing the truth doesn't prevent damage. It causes different damage. Apologizing doesn't fix anything. It just makes the perpetrator feel better. I joined support groups for people who'd done harmful things and were trying to change. Sex offenders, drunk drivers who'd hurt people, domestic abusers. Being in those groups was humbling and appropriate. I'd caused serious harm through my choices. The fact that I hadn't intended maximum harm didn't matter. Impact matters more than intent. These groups helped me understand accountability and change. Most people in them had rationalized their behavior at the time. We all had stories about how it wasn't that bad, or we had good reasons. We were all wrong. The academic consequences continued long after the initial expulsion. Papers I'd co-authored were being reviewed for ethical issues. Some were retracted. My co-authors, who had nothing to do with the catfishing, were being questioned about their judgment in working with me. I'd tainted everyone I'd collaborated with. Conferences I'd been accepted to speak at rescinded invitations. Professional organizations I belonged to suggested I resign. The exile was total. I tried to rebuild in different ways. Maybe I couldn't be an academic researcher, but I could be something else. I considered going back to school for a different field, but the expulsion and ethical violations followed me. Admissions committees found out. I'd been flagged in databases. My academic record would forever include the notation about research misconduct. I was branded, and that brand didn't wash off. Dating was impossible. How do you explain this to potential partners? On the third date, by the way, I catfished someone as a social experiment and destroyed multiple lives. Even if I didn't tell them, they'd find out. My name Googles terribly. Anyone doing basic due diligence before a relationship would discover the whole story. I tried dating apps myself, ironically, but the irony wasn't lost on Matches. Someone recognized my name and called me out publicly in the app. That went viral in local dating circles. I was blocked preemptively by hundreds of people. The financial devastation was severe. Legal fees for defending against the lawsuit ate through my savings. I had student loans from my undergraduate and master's degrees that I still had to pay despite not finishing the PhD. The retail job barely covered rent and food. I had to move to a cheaper apartment, sell my car, live extremely frugally. I'd gone from comfortable PhD student with prospects to broke retail worker with a destroyed reputation. The economic consequences of ethical failures are rarely discussed, but they're significant. I attempted suicide about a year into the fallout. The depression and hopelessness became overwhelming. I felt like I'd destroyed too much to ever recover, like the world would be better without me in it, like I deserved whatever suffering came my way. I took pills and was found by my roommate who called 911. I spent a week in psychiatric care. It was simultaneously the lowest point and a strange turning point. The psychiatrist helped me see that while I'd caused harm, killing myself wouldn't undo it. I needed to live with the consequences and somehow find meaning anyway. After the hospitalization, I started volunteering, working with vulnerable populations, trying to give back, trying to demonstrate through actions that I understood harm and wanted to prevent it. I volunteered at crisis hotlines, at homeless shelters, at animal rescues, anything where I could help, without needing credentials or passing in background checks that would reveal my past. The work was meaningful, but also painful. I was helping people while knowing I'd hurt people. The cognitive dissonance was constant. I reached out to researchers who study research ethics. I wanted to participate in their work as a case study. Here's someone who violated ethics. Here's what happened. Here's what I learned. Maybe it prevents future violations. Some researchers were interested. Others wanted nothing to do with me. But I did participate in a few studies about ethical failures and prevention. Talking about my mistakes clinically for actual approved research felt like small penance. Marcus reached out 2 years later. Not to me directly, but through a mutual connection. He'd seen that I was participating in ethics research and speaking about my failures. He wanted me to know that he'd made progress in therapy. He still struggled with trust, but he was dating again. He was functioning. He didn't forgive me, but he acknowledged my efforts at accountability. It was the closest thing to closure I'd gotten. He didn't want contact, but he wanted me to know he was surviving. I cried for an hour after receiving that message. The lawsuit settled eventually. I couldn't afford a trial, and the evidence against me was clear. I agreed to pay a settlement amount that I'll be paying off for years. The real woman whose photos I used got compensation and a formal apology. She'll never forgive me either, but at least she got something tangible. The legal case closing didn't bring relief, just exhaustion. It was over, but nothing was fixed. Closure is a myth when you're the villain. I think constantly about alternative timelines. If I'd just done traditional research, if I'd gotten ethics board approval for a modified version of the study, if I'd stopped after the first week instead of continuing, if I'd been honest from the start about my academic interests, any of these choices, and none of the destruction happens. But I made the choices I made. I have to live with being the person who made those choices. That's the hardest part. Not the external consequences, but the internal knowledge of what I'm capable of. The psychology community has used my case as an example. Ethics classes discuss what I did wrong and why. Papers have been written about my failures. I'm a cautionary tale in textbooks now. Future researchers learn from my mistakes. That's something positive, at least. My destruction serves a purpose. I prevent, future harm by being an example of what not to do. It's not redemption, but it's contribution. My suffering has meaning, even if that meaning is just warning others. I've considered changing my name legally, starting completely over somewhere else, but that feels like running from responsibility. I caused this. I need to own it. Running away doesn't change what I did, it just hides it. I've spent 2 years learning that accountability means staying present with the consequences, not escaping them. So, I keep my name and my history, and I deal with people knowing who I am and what I did. It's uncomfortable, but it's honest. My therapist asks what I've learned. The obvious answers are don't catfish people, don't conduct unethical research, don't treat humans as objects. But the deeper learning is about empathy and perspective. I was so focused on my research questions that I lost sight of the human being on the other end. I abstracted Marcus into a case study. I forgot he was a real person with real feelings, who could be really hurt. That disconnection between intellectual curiosity and human impact is what allowed me to do something so harmful. I've also learned about the permanence of digital actions. I thought deleting the profile would erase the evidence. I was wrong. Screenshots exist. Digital footprints remain. People remember. The internet is forever, and actions have permanent consequences. That's terrifying and appropriate. We should be afraid of causing harm that can't be undone. That fear would prevent a lot of unethical behavior if people really understood it. The hardest question I face is whether I'm fundamentally a bad person or a good person who did a bad thing. My therapist says that's a false dichotomy. I'm a person who made terrible choices and is now making different choices. People are complex and contain multitudes. I'm capable of both harm and help, both cruelty and kindness. The work is choosing kindness consistently and accepting that the past harm doesn't disappear. I can't balance scales or earn redemption. I can only try to do better going forward. I still work retail. I still volunteer. I still attend therapy and support groups. I still pay on the settlement. I still live with anxiety about being recognized and judged. But I also laugh sometimes. I have friendships, carefully built with people who know my history and accept me anyway. I have interests and hobbies. I'm not just the sum of my worst choice, even though that choice had devastating consequences. I'm trying to be a full person who happens to carry heavy baggage. Some days that feels possible. Other days it feels hopeless. If I could talk to my past self, I'd say, don't do it. Obviously. But also, understand that research ethics exist for a reason. Informed consent isn't bureaucratic red tape. It's protecting human dignity. The ends don't justify the means when the means cause harm. Curiosity isn't worth another person's trauma. Academic achievement isn't worth ethical compromise. But past me wouldn't have listened. Past me was arrogant and disconnected. I had to learn through devastating consequences. I wouldn't wish that learning process on anyone. To Marcus, if you somehow see this, I'm sorry. I know sorry isn't enough. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I'm genuinely sorry for the harm I caused. You were a real person who deserved respect and honesty. I treated you as an object for study. That was wrong and cruel. I hope you found peace and healing. I hope you found people who treat you with the dignity I denied you. You didn't deserve what I did to you. Nobody does. To anyone considering catfishing for any reason, don't. Not as a joke, not as a prank, not as research, not as revenge, not for any reason. The harm is real and lasting. The victims suffer in ways that aren't obvious from the outside. The ripple effects touch people you never intended to hurt. It's cruel and indefensible. If you're curious about deception psychology, study it ethically, through approved research methods. Don't become what you're studying. The cost is too high for everyone involved. So that's my story. I catfished someone as a social experiment and accidentally ruined 6 lives, including my own. I destroyed my academic career, traumatized multiple people, cost myself thousands of dollars, damaged relationships, became a cautionary tale, and learned that some mistakes can't be fixed. I'm living with the consequences and trying to do better. It's not redemption. It's just existence with heavy knowledge. This is what happens when intellectual curiosity overtakes ethical judgment. Learn from my failure. Don't repeat my mistakes. The damage spreads farther than you imagine and lasts longer than you expect. I know. I'm still living in it. Story 2. I'm a 29-year-old grad student drowning in debt. When I saw a flyer offering 5,000 for participating in a 2-week sleep study, I jumped at it. Easy money, right? Sleep in a lab, let them monitor my brainwaves, collect my check. I needed the money desperately. I should have read the fine print more carefully. I should have asked more questions. I should have trusted my instincts when something felt off. Now, I'm 3 months out from the study, and I'm losing my grip on reality. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know if I'm awake or dreaming. I need to tell someone what happened before I completely lose my mind. The study was run by a pharmaceutical company called Neuraxis. They were testing a new sleep aid medication. The flyer said they needed healthy adults with no sleep disorders for a controlled trial. 2 weeks in a sleep lab, taking the medication nightly, having sleep patterns monitored. Seemed straightforward. I called the number, went through a screening interview, passed all the health checks. They selected me as one of 20 participants. We'd all stay in individual rooms at their research facility, round-the-clock monitoring. All meals provided. No outside contact during the study. $5,000, paid at completion. I should have been suspicious about the no outside contact rule. They said it was to maintain controlled conditions and prevent participants from influencing each other's results. Made sense at the time. Looking back, they were isolating us, making sure we couldn't compare experiences or raise concerns together. Classic manipulation tactic. But I was focused on the money and didn't think critically about the restrictions. The facility was on the outskirts of the city. Modern building, clean, professional. I arrived on a Sunday evening, met the research staff, signed more consent forms. They were extensive and written in dense medical jargon. I skimmed them. I know. Never sign without reading carefully. But it was like 50 pages, and I wanted to get started. The staff were friendly. The head researcher, Dr. Reeves, explained the protocol. Take the medication before bed. Sleep with electrodes monitoring brain activity. Fill out questionnaires about sleep quality each morning. Simple. The first night was normal. I took a small blue pill around 10 p.m., fell asleep easily, slept deeply, woke up feeling refreshed, filled out the questionnaire, had breakfast. The day was mine to do whatever in the facility. There was a common area with TV, books, gym equipment. I met a few other participants. Everyone seemed normal. We compared notes on the first night. Everyone slept well. No side effects. We were optimistic about the easy money. Night 2 was when things started getting weird. I took the pill and went to bed. I had vivid dreams. Extremely vivid. I was in my childhood home, but everything was slightly wrong. The colors were too bright. The proportions were off. My mother was there, but she had too many teeth when she smiled. I remember noticing that in the dream, thinking that's weird, but accepting it. Dream logic. When I woke up, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been somewhere real. Not just a dream. Somewhere else. The memory lingered all day. The questionnaire that morning asked about dream intensity and recall. I marked that I'd had vivid dreams. Several other participants mentioned the same thing. The staff said vivid dreams were a common side effect of sleep medications, and nothing to worry about. By that evening, I'd mostly forgotten about it. I took the pill for night 3 and went to bed. Night 3, the dreams were worse. I was in a hospital, fluorescent lights flickering, long hallways that went on forever. I was looking for something, but I didn't know what. Other people were there, the other study participants, but they couldn't see me. I was trying to talk to them, but no sound came out. I woke up gasping. My heart was racing. The electrodes on my head felt like they were burning. I ripped them off and sat up in bed, completely disoriented. It took me several minutes to remember where I was. A staff member came in almost immediately. The monitors had alerted them. They asked if I was okay. I said I'd had a nightmare. They noted it and reattached the electrodes. They said night terrors can happen with sleep medication and asked if I wanted to discontinue. I thought about the $5,000. I needed that money. I said I'd continue. They gave me a sedative to help me get back to sleep. I did sleep, but I don't remember if I dreamed. The next morning, I felt off, like I was watching my life through a screen. Everything seemed slightly distant. I mentioned it to another participant, a woman named Maya. She said she felt the same way, like being high, but not in a good way, disconnected. We compared our dreams. Hers had been similar to mine. Strange locations, other participants appearing, a feeling of searching for something. We wondered if the medication was causing shared hallucinations somehow, but that seemed impossible. By night 5, I was scared. The dreams were becoming more intense and more disturbing. I'd dream I was in the sleep lab, but something was wrong. The staff had black eyes. The walls were breathing. I'd wake up screaming, multiple times a night. Each time, staff would come in, calm me down, give me more sedatives. I was losing track of how many pills I was taking. The study protocol was 1 sleep aid pill per night, but the sedatives to calm me down after nightmares, those weren't part of the original plan. How many drugs was I actually on? I tried to quit. On day 6, I told Dr. Reeves I wanted to leave. He was very understanding. He said of course I could leave, but I wouldn't receive the full payment if I left early. I'd only get $500 for the days completed. He said the worst of the side effects were probably over. My brain was adjusting to the medication. If I could stick it out for 8 more days, I'd get the full amount, plus a bonus for persevering through side effects. He offered an extra $2,000, on top of the original $5,000. $7,000 total. I was in so much debt. I couldn't turn that down. I stayed. Biggest mistake of my life. The dreams continued to intensify. By night 7, I couldn't tell when I was asleep and when I was awake. I'd be in the common area talking to Maya and suddenly realize I was dreaming. Or I'd think I was dreaming and then realize I was awake. The boundaries dissolved completely. Time became meaningless. I'd think hours had passed and it had been minutes, or vice versa. The staff kept assuring me this was normal, that my brain was adjusting, that it would pass. Other participants were having similar experiences. One guy, David, stopped sleeping entirely. He said he was afraid to close his eyes because the dreams were too real. He'd stay awake for days. The staff finally sedated him against his will. I watched them do it. Or I dreamed I watched them do it. I still don't know which. Maya disappeared after day 9. The staff said she'd left the study, but I never saw her leave. She was just gone. When I asked other participants about her, some remembered her and some didn't. That made no sense. By day 10, I was having full hallucinations while awake. I'd see shadow figures in my peripheral vision. I'd hear whispers that no one else heard. I'd smell things that weren't there. Burning plastic, rotting meat, flowers. The sensations were vivid and terrifying. I couldn't trust my own senses. I told Dr. Reeves something was seriously wrong. He said we were almost done. Just 4 more days. He increased my medication. Said it would help stabilize my symptoms. I took what he gave me. I was beyond questioning. The last 4 days are a blur. I remember fragments. Being in the sleep lab. Being in impossible places. Talking to people who didn't exist. Seeing things that couldn't be real. I remember Dr. Reeves doing additional tests, scans, injections, things that weren't part of the original protocol. But I was so confused, I just complied. I remember pain, confusion, terror. And then suddenly it was day 14, and I was being discharged. They gave me a check for $7,000 as promised. They gave me papers to sign agreeing not to discuss the study details due to proprietary research at us. They gave me a prescription for anti-anxiety medication to help with any lingering side effects. They said the symptoms would fade over a few weeks as the drug left my system. They said if I had any concerns, I could call their medical hotline. They sent me home in an Uber. I got back to my apartment and collapsed. The symptoms didn't fade. It's been 3 months and I still can't tell what's real. I'll be at the grocery store and suddenly I'm not sure if I'm really there or if I'm dreaming. I'll have conversations with friends and later can't remember if they actually happened. I've called people to confirm events, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. I've looked at photos on my phone that I don't remember taking. I've found notes I wrote that don't sound like me. My memory is full of holes and inconsistencies. I tried to contact Neuraxis. The number they gave me is disconnected. I went back to the facility. The building is empty. There's a for lease sign out front. The pharmaceutical company doesn't seem to exist. I've Googled Neuraxis extensively. No legitimate pharmaceutical company by that name. No clinical trials registered. Nothing. It's like they never existed. But I have the check. I deposited it. The money is real. So, something happened. I didn't imagine the whole thing. But I can't prove it. I've tried to find the other participants. I have first names only. Maya, David, a few others. I've searched social media. Nothing. I don't know their last names. I don't have contact information. We were deliberately kept isolated. I tried posting in local groups, asking if anyone participated in a Neuraxis sleep study. No responses. Either they're not seeing my posts, or they're not willing to come forward. Maybe they signed the non-disclosure agreements and are afraid of legal consequences. Maybe they don't remember. Maybe something worse happened to them. I went to a doctor, described my symptoms. She ran tests, blood work, brain scans, psychiatric evaluation. Everything came back normal. She said I might be experiencing anxiety or dissociation from stress. She referred me to a psychiatrist. I saw him, told him the whole story. He said it sounded like drug-induced psychosis, but without knowing what I was given, he couldn't treat it specifically. He prescribed antipsychotics. They help a little. The hallucinations are less frequent, but the fundamental problem remains. I can't tell what's real. I still have dreams that feel more real than waking life. I'll dream I'm in the facility again. Dr. Reeves is doing tests. He's telling me something important, but I can't understand the words. I wake up and for hours, I'm not sure if I'm actually awake. I'll do reality checks, pinch myself, read text, look at clocks, the usual lucid dreaming techniques. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes I'll think I'm confirming I'm awake, and then realize later I was still dreaming. The layers of consciousness are unstable. My work has suffered. I'm a research assistant for a psychology professor. Ironically, I can't focus. I make mistakes. I forget instructions. My professor has noticed. She's asked if something is wrong. I don't know how to explain. I participated in a shady sleep study, and now I'm losing my mind? That sounds insane. She'd think I need psychiatric help. She'd be right. But psychiatric help isn't fixing this. The drugs I was given did something to my brain that isn't showing up on any scans or tests. My relationships are falling apart. I've canceled plans because I'm not sure if the plans are real or if I dreamed them. I've had arguments with people about events they say never happened. I've been accused of lying or making excuses when I'm genuinely confused about reality. My girlfriend broke up with me. She said I was acting paranoid and unstable. She said I needed help she couldn't provide. I don't blame her. I'm not the person I was before the study. That person understood what was real. I don't have that certainty anymore. The money is running out. $7,000 seemed like a lot, but 3 months of medication, doctor visits, and reduced work hours have eaten through most of it. I'll soon be back where I started financially, except now I'm also mentally unstable. I traded my sanity for money that didn't even solve my financial problems long term. It was a terrible deal. I should have known. People don't pay $7,000 for a simple sleep study. There was always something else going on. I've researched similar cases. People who've participated in sketchy medical trials and had lasting side effects. There are more stories than you'd think. Underground pharmaceutical testing, unethical research. People desperate for money, agreeing to things they don't understand. Usually nothing comes of it, legally. The companies disappear. The participants are left dealing with consequences. There's no recourse. You sign the consent forms. You take the risk. If something goes wrong, that's on you. I think about those consent forms I signed without reading. I think about what I might have agreed to. Experimental drugs, invasive procedures, waiving rights to sue, agreeing to confidentiality. I have no copies of what I signed. I have no proof of what was done to me. I have a check and a prescription bottle, and memories I can't trust. That's all the evidence I have that any of it happened. It's not enough to build a case. It's barely enough to convince myself I'm not just having a psychotic break. Sometimes I wonder if I am just crazy. Maybe there was no study. Maybe I had a psychotic episode and the whole thing was a delusion. The money could be explained away. A loan I don't remember taking. A gift I've forgotten about. My brain is creating false memories to explain my mental state. That's possible. That might even be more likely than a secret pharmaceutical company running illegal trials. But the details feel so real. The facility. Dr. Reeves. Maya and David. The dreams. If my brain invented all that, what else has it invented? How much of my life is false memory? I keep a journal now. I document everything. What I eat, where I go, who I talk to. Reality anchors. Things I can look back on and confirm happened. Except sometimes I'll read entries I don't remember writing. Or I'll have memories of events that aren't in the journal. The journal is supposed to help, but it's adding to the confusion. I don't know if I can trust my own documentation. I don't know if I can trust anything. The nightmares continue. I'm always back in the facility. Always undergoing tests I don't understand. Always trying to find something or someone. Maya appears sometimes. She tells me things. Important things. But when I wake up, I can't remember what she said. I'll have the sense that she's given me crucial information, but I can't access it. It's maddening. Like the answer is right there, but behind glass, I can't break. I've had moments of clarity, times when I'm certain I'm awake and grounded in reality. Those moments are precious. I try to accomplish as much as possible during them. Pay bills, communicate with people, take care of necessities. But the clarity never lasts. It slips away, and I'm back in the fog, uncertain, dissociated, floating between states of consciousness without stable ground. My family has noticed something is wrong. They think I'm on drugs. In a way, they're right. I was on drugs. Experimental drugs I can't identify. That did something to my brain that isn't reversible. But telling them that sounds like an addict's excuse. I've stopped trying to explain. I just avoid them. It's easier than dealing with their concern and judgment. It's easier than trying to make them understand something I don't understand aimed myself. I'm scared about the future. Will this get worse? Will I completely lose the ability to distinguish reality? Will I end up institutionalized? I'm barely functional now. I can't maintain relationships or work effectively or trust my own mind. How much further can I decline before I'm completely non-functional? There's no treatment for this. No one knows what I was given or how to counteract it. I'm on my own trying to navigate a reality that shifts beneath my feet. Sometimes I think about suicide. Not because I want to die, but because I want the confusion to end. If I can't trust what's real, what's the point of continuing? But then I worry that death might not end it. What if I die and I'm still stuck in this state? What if this is permanent, beyond death? What if the drugs changed something fundamental about consciousness, and now I'm trapped forever? That thought is more terrifying than staying alive and confused. I'm writing this as an anchor, a record of what happened while I still have enough clarity to articulate it. I participated in a sleep study run by a fake pharmaceutical company. They gave me drugs that destroyed my ability to distinguish waking from dreaming. They disappeared. I'm left dealing with the consequences alone. If you see flyers for medical studies offering large amounts of money, please be careful. Read everything. ask questions. Trust your instincts. Don't do what I did. The money isn't worth it. No amount of money is worth losing your grip on reality. To anyone reading this who participated in a Neuraxis study, please contact me. We need to find each other. We need to document what happened. We need to hold someone accountable. And maybe if we pool our experiences, we can figure out what was done to us and how to fix it. I can't do this alone anymore. I'm losing the fight. I need to know I'm not the only one. I need to know this really happened. I need to know I'm not just insane. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. The boundaries keep dissolving. Soon I might not be able to write coherently. Soon I might not remember my own name. Before that happens, I needed to tell someone what happened. I needed to warn people. I needed to leave a record that I was real. That this happened. That I'm not crazy. Or if I am crazy, that there's a reason. That I wasn't always like this. That I was normal before the study. That I had a life and a mind and a future. And it was all taken from me for $7,000 and research I'll never understand. So, that's my story. I participated in a sleep study and lost my ability to tell what's real. I'm writing this from somewhere between waking and dreaming. I'm not sure which. I'm not sure it matters anymore. If you're reading this and it feels like a dream, maybe it is. Maybe I'm dreaming you. Maybe you're dreaming me. Maybe we're all trapped in the same pharmaceutical nightmare. Maybe none of this is real. I don't know. I can't know. That's my curse now. Permanent uncertainty. Welcome to my world. I hope you never end up here. The practical impacts are devastating in ways I didn't expect. I can't drive anymore because I'm not sure if the road is real. I've pulled over multiple times convinced I'm dreaming, only to get honked at by real cars. I've also driven through what I thought was a dream and realized later it was reality. The risk is too high. I could kill someone. So I've stopped driving. My independence is gone. I rely on others for transportation, and that's humiliating. I can't be trusted with important decisions. Should I pay this bill? Did I already pay it? Or did I dream that I paid it? Should I eat? I ate an hour ago. Or did I? Maybe that was yesterday. Or maybe I dreamed it. I've lost weight because I often can't tell if I'm hungry, or if the hunger is a dream sensation. I've found food wrappers I don't remember opening. I've bought groceries that are already in my fridge. Basic survival tasks have become complicated puzzles. Social interactions are nightmares, ironically. I'll run into someone who seems to know me. They'll reference conversations we had. I have no memory of these conversations. Are they real? Did we actually talk? Or are they confused? Or am I confused? Or is this person a hallucination? I've started avoiding social situations entirely because I can't navigate them safely. I'm becoming a recluse because interaction with others exposes my disability too obviously. I've had to tell my landlord I might be unreliable. I've asked my neighbor to check on me periodically. I've set up automatic bill payments because I can't trust myself to remember due dates. I've put notes everywhere. Reminders. Instructions. Reality checks. My apartment looks like a conspiracy theorist's lair. Sticky notes on every surface. Calendars marked with basic information. Photos taped up to remind me of what's real. It helps, but it's also depressing evidence of how far I've fallen. The medical system has been useless. I've seen 5 different doctors. None of them can help. They all suggest therapy for trauma or psychosis treatment. But this isn't trauma, and it's not traditional psychosis. It's pharmacological damage. My brain chemistry was altered by drugs I can't identify. Without knowing what I was given, doctors can't counteract it. They're treating symptoms without understanding the cause. It's like putting a Band-Aid on internal bleeding. Useless. I tried to hire a lawyer. Maybe I could sue someone even without knowing who ran the study. But lawyers want evidence, documentation, proof of harm. I have a check from a company that doesn't exist, and my testimony, which sounds insane. No lawyer will take that case. Even if they did, who would we sue? A fake company with no address? It's a dead end legally. I'm stuck with consequences and no recourse. The psychological impact might be worse than the perceptual problems. I'm constantly second-guessing everything. Is this emotion real, or am I imagining it? Am I actually sad, or did I dream I was sad when people express feelings toward me? I don't know if I should trust that it's really happening. My emotional life has become as uncertain as my perception. I'm dissociating from my own feelings because I can't verify them. I'm becoming emotionally numb because caring about things that might not be real is too painful. I've stopped making plans for the future. How can I plan when I don't know what's real in the present? I had goals. I was working toward a PhD. I wanted to travel. I wanted relationships. All of that requires a stable sense of reality. I can't maintain any of it. My future is day-to-day survival. Making it through each day without completely losing my mind. That's my only goal now. Anything beyond that is impossible to contemplate. Sleep has become terrifying. I used to love sleep. Now I dread it. I don't know if I'll wake up. I don't know if waking up is real. Sometimes I'll sleep and dream I've woken up multiple times. False awakenings, stacked on false awakenings. I'll go through an entire day in a dream, then actually wake up and not know if this wake up is real either. The exhaustion is crushing. I'm tired all the time, but afraid to sleep. It's a catch-22 that's destroying my health. I've researched experimental drugs and their effects. There are substances that alter perception, dissociate consciousness, disrupt memory formation. Ketamine, PCP, experimental anesthetics. But those effects are temporary. They wear off when the drug leaves your system. What I'm experiencing is permanent. Whatever they gave me did lasting damage, changed neural pathways, disrupted the brain's ability to distinguish between internal and external reality. That's not supposed to be possible with known drugs, which makes me think they were testing something truly experimental, something not approved, something dangerous. The conspiracy theories I could spin are endless. Were they testing drugs for CIA mind control programs? For military applications? For cognitive enhancement gone wrong? For consciousness research? I don't know. I'll never know. They disappeared completely. But someone funded that research. Someone approved those protocols. Someone is sitting on data about what happened to 20 people. Maybe we all ended up like me. Maybe some ended up worse. Maybe some died and their deaths were covered up. I'll never know that either. I'm just one victim in an unknown experiment that destroyed my life for data I'll never see. The paranoia is constant. Is the government watching me? Are the researchers tracking my decline? Is this permanent, or will it get worse? Will I be disappeared because I know too much? Every unknown person could be connected to the study. Every strange occurrence could be evidence of surveillance. I hate that I think this way, but I can't stop. When your reality is already uncertain, paranoia fills the gaps with worst-case scenarios. Maybe I'm paranoid, or maybe I'm being monitored. I can't tell the difference. written letters to medical boards, research ethics committees, the FDA. I've reported what I can remember about the study. Most haven't responded. One sent a form letter saying they'd investigate. I never heard back. The system isn't designed to help people like me. It's designed to protect research institutions and pharmaceutical companies. Individual victims are acceptable losses in the name of medical progress. That's the brutal truth I've learned. We don't matter. Our suffering is footnotes in someone else's research. I think about the other participants constantly. Where are they? Are they suffering like me? Are they worse? Are they better? Did some of them die? Did some of them figure out how to cope? I desperately want to find them. Not just for accountability, but for community. For someone who understands what this is like. The isolation of being the only person who knows what happened is crushing. I need to know I'm not alone in this, but I can't find them. They're as disappeared as the company that ran the study. I've considered going public, contacting media, telling my story widely. But I sound insane. My testimony alone isn't credible. I'd just be another person claiming pharmaceutical companies did experiments on them. Without evidence or corroboration, I'm just a conspiracy theorist. Media won't run the story. It's not verifiable. And going public might make things worse. If someone is watching me, revealing what I know could be dangerous. I'm trapped between wanting to expose what happened and being afraid of the consequences. The worst moments are when I lose time completely. I'll blink, and hours have passed. Or I'll think hours have passed, and it's been minutes. My perception of time is as broken as my perception of reality. I've missed appointments, shown up days early or days late. Time doesn't flow linearly for me anymore. It jumps and stutters and loops. I can't maintain a schedule. I can't be reliable. That alone would make normal life impossible, even if everything else was fine. I've started recording myself, video journals, audio notes, documenting my state in real time. Maybe it will help doctors understand. Maybe it will serve as evidence if I ever find the other participants. Maybe it's just me desperately trying to leave proof that I exist, and this is real. I watch the recordings back, and sometimes I don't recognize myself. The person on screen looks haunted, sounds confused, barely holds together. That's me, now. That's what the study did to me. My faith in institutions is destroyed. I trusted that a sleep study would be ethical and safe. I trusted that medical research has oversight. I trusted that pharmaceutical companies follow rules. All of that trust was betrayed. The system failed completely. Not just failed to protect me, but actively allowed or facilitated harm. I'll never trust medical research again. I'll never volunteer for anything. I'll be suspicious of every doctor and every treatment. That's a terrible way to live, but it's the reality they created for me. I'm angry, but I don't know where to direct the anger. At Dr. Reeves, who ran the study, he probably used a fake name. At Neuraxis, they don't exist. At myself for being desperate enough to participate, that feels like victim blaming, but I do blame myself. At the system that allows this to happen, that's too abstract to rage against effectively. The anger has nowhere to go, so it turns inward. I'm angry at myself for being naive, for being broke, for being damaged, for surviving this when maybe dying would have been kinder. I've thought about trying to replicate what happened. Find underground researchers. Describe my symptoms. See if anyone knows what drug could cause this. But that's dangerous. If I start asking questions to the wrong people, I could end up in another study. Or worse. The fact that I can't trust my own perception makes me vulnerable. Someone could easily manipulate me, convince me of false realities, use my disability against me. I have to stay isolated to stay safe, even though the isolation is killing me in different ways. The question that haunts me most is, Why me? What did they see in my screening that made them choose me? Was I particularly susceptible to the drug? Did my brain chemistry make me a good test subject? Or was it random? Did they just need bodies and I was unlucky enough to be desperate at the right time? I'll never know what made me a target. That not knowing eats at me. Was this preventable? Could I have avoided this somehow? Or was I doomed the moment I saw that flyer? 3 months feels like 3 years. Or 3 days. I can't tell. Time is broken. My life is divided into before the study and after. Before I was a functioning adult with problems, but also hope. After I'm a barely functional mess with no hope of recovery. That dividing line is stark. I'm not the same person. That person died in the sleep lab. What came out is something else. Something broken. I'm grieving for who I used to be while trying to survive as who I am now. So that's my expanded story. I participated in a sleep study that destroyed my ability to distinguish reality. I'm writing this from a state of permanent uncertainty. I can't trust my mind. I can't trust my perceptions. I can't trust that anything is real. The life I had is gone. The life I have is a waking nightmare, and there's no escape, no cure, no accountability. Just me, alone, trying to hold on to whatever fragments of reality I can grasp. If you're reading this, learn from my mistake. Some money isn't worth earning. Some studies aren't worth participating in. Some doors shouldn't be opened. I opened one, and I can't close it. I'm stuck on the other side forever. Don't follow me here. Please. No one else should have to live like this. Story 3. I'm posting this anonymously, because what I did could probably get me sued or worse. This happened over the course of 2 years, and only ended 6 months ago. I still don't know if I'm proud or ashamed of myself. Maybe both. I worked in fine dining for 12 years, worked my way up from dishwasher to sous chef at one of the best restaurants in Chicago. Then I met Marcus Bellamy, and everything fell apart. For those who don't follow the food world, Marcus Bellamy is a celebrity chef with 3 Michelin stars, 5 restaurants, 2 cookbooks, and a TV show. He's known for being a perfectionist and a hard-ass, but also brilliant. Working for him was supposed to be the opportunity of a lifetime. When he opened a new flagship restaurant in Chicago and offered me the executive chef position, I jumped at it. Biggest mistake of my life. The first 6 months were hell, but I expected that. Marcus was demanding, temperamental, verbally abusive. He'd throw plates, scream at staff, fire people on the spot for minor mistakes. I told myself it was worth it for the exposure and experience. The food we were creating was incredible. Critics loved us. We were on track for Michelin consideration. I was working 18-hour days, but I was building something special. Then the trouble started. Marcus began taking credit for my dishes. Recipes I'd developed, techniques I'd pioneered. He'd present them on his TV show, and in interviews as his own creations. At first I didn't care much. That's how kitchens work. The head chef gets the glory. But then he started getting nasty about it. When I'd mention in staff meetings that I'd created something, he'd publicly mock me and claim I was delusional. He'd gaslight me in front of the entire kitchen staff. The breaking point came when a major food magazine wanted to feature our restaurant. They interviewed both of us. I talked about the creative process, mentioned some of my signature dishes, discussed my culinary philosophy. The article came out and I wasn't mentioned at all. Not once. Marcus had convinced the journalist that I was just an employee executing his vision. Every dish I'd created was attributed to him. Every technique was his innovation. I'd been completely erased. I confronted him about it privately. He laughed in my face. He said nobody cared about a sous chef. that I should be grateful to work for him at all. He said if I didn't like it, I could leave, but good luck finding another job after he was done trashing my reputation. I was furious, but I needed the job. I had a mortgage and student loans. I swallowed my pride and kept working. Then Marcus started sabotaging me actively. He'd change recipes without telling me, then blame me when dishes came out wrong. He'd schedule me for impossible shifts and write me up when I couldn't keep up. He started telling other chefs in Chicago that I was difficult and unreliable. Job offers I'd been considering suddenly evaporated. I realized he was systematically destroying my career because he saw me as a threat. The final straw was when he fired me. He claimed I'd been stealing from the restaurant, taking expensive ingredients home. It was a complete lie. He'd planted evidence, had the inventory manager back up his story, everything calculated. He fired me publicly during dinner service, had security escort me out, told the whole staff I was a thief. My reputation was destroyed. No restaurant would hire me. I was blacklisted. I spent 6 months looking for work. Nothing. Every interview ended the same way. They'd Google me, find Marcus's version of events, decide I was too much of a risk. I burned through my savings, lost my apartment, moved in with my sister. I was devastated and angry and desperate. That's when I started planning revenge. Not smart, not healthy, but I was past caring about smart and healthy. I started small. Marcus had a routine. Every Tuesday, he'd visit his flagship Chicago restaurant to check on things. He always parked in the same spot, always ordered the same coffee from the shop next door, always sat at the same table to review paperwork. I started documenting everything. His schedule, his habits, his weaknesses. I became obsessed. I created a fake email account and started sending anonymous tips to food critics and bloggers. Nothing provably false, just uncomfortable truths. Marcus's restaurants had health code violations that got quietly fixed. He'd plagiarized recipes from smaller chefs who couldn't fight back. His TV personality was fake. He was actually cruel and abusive to staff. Most outlets ignored me, but a few started digging. Small articles appeared questioning his methods and ethics. Then I got creative. I knew Marcus's suppliers, his vendors, his business relationships. I'd worked with all of them. I started calling in favors and spreading rumors. I told a seafood supplier that Marcus was bad-mouthing their quality. Told a produce vendor that he was looking to switch to their competitor. Nothing major, just seeds of doubt. Marcus started having supply issues. Deliveries would be late or wrong. His costs went up as vendors charged him premium prices. I befriended one of his line cooks, a young guy named Alex, who was getting the same abusive treatment I'd received. I didn't tell Alex what I was doing, but I encouraged his resentment. I'd meet him for drinks and let him vent about Marcus. I suggested he document the abuse, keep records of hostile work environment stuff. Alex started recording kitchen interactions on his phone. The recordings were damning. Marcus screaming slurs, throwing things at staff, creating an atmosphere of terror. Alex eventually quit and took those recordings to a labor attorney. A lawsuit was filed for workplace harassment and hostile work environment. 6 other former employees joined the suit. Marcus had to hire expensive lawyers. The lawsuit made news in the food industry. His brand took a hit. I watched from the sidelines feeling satisfied, but knowing I wasn't done. Next, I went after his TV show. I knew the producer through industry connections. I reached out as a concerned former employee and shared stories about Marcus's behavior, how he treated crew members, his diva demands, his temper tantrums off camera. I connected the producer with other former employees who had similar stories. The production company started getting nervous about their association with Marcus. His contract renewal became uncertain. I also started leaving negative reviews online. Not on my own. That would be too obvious. I created multiple fake personas, spent months building their credibility with reviews of other restaurants, then slowly started posting about bad experiences at Marcus's places. Nothing too dramatic, just consistent mediocrity. Cold food, slow service, overpriced dishes, rude staff. One negative review means nothing but 20 over 6 months. Creates a pattern. The reviews affected business. Reservations dropped. Marcus started panicking, implementing new policies, firing staff he blamed for the decline. The chaos made things worse. Good employees had left for stabler jobs. The quality of food actually did decline, as the kitchen became a revolving door of new hires. My fake reviews became real reviews, as actual customers had poor experiences. Then I made my biggest move. I knew Marcus had a secret investor, a silent partner who'd funded his expansion. This investor was a wealthy businessman who valued discretion and reputation. I did some digging and found out this investor had some questionable financial dealings in his past. Nothing illegal exactly, but ethically gray. I anonymously sent information to a financial journalist, suggesting they look into the investor's relationship with Marcus's restaurants. The article that resulted was explosive. It detailed the investor's history and questioned whether Marcus's restaurants were being used for money laundering. There was no proof of actual wrongdoing, but the implication was enough. The investor panicked and pulled his funding. Marcus suddenly had a massive cash flow problem. He had to close 2 of his restaurants. The Chicago flagship stayed open, but on life support. I should have stopped there. I'd hurt his reputation, his business, his finances. I'd gotten my revenge, but I was addicted to the destruction. I kept going. I reached out to the journalists who'd written his cookbooks and suggested they fact-check his recipes. Several dishes turned out to be copied or only slightly modified from other chefs. The publisher got nervous about plagiarism lawsuits. His 3rd cookbook deal was canceled. Then I targeted his personal life. Marcus was married to a former model named Sophia. By all accounts, their marriage was already rocky because of his work obsession and temper. I happened to know through kitchen gossip that Marcus had been having an affair with one of his hostesses. I anonymously sent proof to a celebrity gossip blog. Photos, text messages, the whole package. The blog ran with it. The story went viral. Sophia filed for divorce. It got ugly and public. She made allegations about his temper and controlling behavior. The divorce proceedings revealed his finances, which were a mess after losing the investor. His image went from successful celebrity chef to abusive, cheating, financially unstable has-been. His TV show was canceled. His remaining restaurants struggled. He became a cautionary tale about ego and downfall. I watched it all unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and growing horror. I'd wanted to hurt him the way he hurt me, but this had gone way beyond that. I'd destroyed his entire life, his career, his marriage, his reputation, everything. And I'd done it methodically and deliberately over 2 years. I'd become obsessed with revenge to an unhealthy degree. I was proud of my cleverness and disgusted with my vindictiveness. The thing is, none of what I revealed was false. Marcus really was abusive to staff. He really did plagiarize recipes. He really did have an affair. His investor really was sketchy. I didn't create lies. I just strategically revealed uncomfortable truths at the worst possible times. But my motivation wasn't justice or protecting others. It was pure revenge. That distinction started to weigh on me. 6 months ago, Marcus sold his last restaurant and moved to Los Angeles to try to restart his career. He's doing private chef work for celebrities, trying to rebuild. He'll probably be fine eventually. Rich, Connected people usually land on their feet. But his glory days are over. He's no longer a star, just another chef with a tarnished reputation. Part of me feels like he got what he deserved. Part of me, it feels like I became as bad as he was. The really messed up part is that my career recovered. As Marcus's empire fell apart, people started questioning his version of events about me. Some of my old colleagues reached out and apologized for believing I was a thief. A small restaurant offered me a head chef position. I'm doing well now, building my reputation honestly this time, but I'm building it on the ruins of what I did to Marcus. I've never told anyone the full extent of what I did. My sister knows some of it, and thinks I went too far. A couple of friends know bits and pieces, but nobody knows the whole coordinated campaign. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not entirely ashamed either. Marcus destroyed my career and reputation maliciously. I returned the favor strategically. The difference is, he did it through direct lies. I did it through revealing truths. The ethics of it keep me up at night. Is revenge okay if the person deserves it? Is orchestrating someone's downfall justified if they're genuinely a bad person? I ruined his marriage, but he was cheating anyway. I cost him his businesses, but he was abusive to employees. I destroyed his reputation, but it was built on stolen credit and plagiarism. Would these consequences have caught up with him eventually without my interference? Maybe. Maybe not. I think about the collateral damage too. Sophia's life was upended by the public divorce. Employees lost jobs when restaurants closed. Investors lost money. All because I wanted revenge on one man. Those people didn't deserve the fallout, but they got it anyway. That guilt is heavy. I didn't just hurt Marcus. I hurt a lot of innocent people around him. The scariest part is how good I got at it. The manipulation, the strategic thinking, the patience to play a long game. I have skills in destruction that I never knew I possessed. I could do this again to someone else if I wanted to. That realization is disturbing. What kind of person spends 2 years methodically destroying another human being? Even if that person wronged them, it's not normal or healthy. My therapist, who I started seeing after all this, says I was processing trauma and powerlessness through control and revenge. She says it's understandable, but unhealthy. We're working on better coping mechanisms. I'm trying to build instead of destroy now. But I can't undo what I did, and honestly, I'm not sure I would if I could. Marcus was a bully who hurt a lot of people. Someone needed to stop him. The question that haunts me is where the line is between justice and revenge. Justice is supposedly impartial and proportional. Revenge is personal and often excessive. What I did was definitely personal and possibly excessive. But was it unjust? Marcus faced consequences for his actual behavior. I didn't fabricate anything. I just ensured the truth came out in the most damaging way possible at the worst possible times. I've thought about reaching out to Marcus, maybe apologizing, maybe just acknowledging what happened. But what would I even say? Sorry, I destroyed your life, but you destroyed mine first? That sounds childish and petty. The truth is, we're both responsible for our own downfalls. He because of his actions, me because of my reactions. We're both cautionary tales in different ways. The food industry is small, and word gets around. Some people suspect I had something to do with Marcus's collapse. Nobody can prove anything, and I've never confirmed it. But there are Becker whispers. Some people respect it, think he got what was coming. Others think I'm vindictive and unstable. Both assessments are probably accurate. I'm complicated. People are complicated. I've seen Marcus once since everything fell apart. We were both at an industry event in New York, some food festival thing. He saw me across the room, and our eyes met. For a moment, I thought he knew. really knew, not just suspected. The look on his face was hurt and angry and defeated. Then he looked away and left. I felt a weird mixture of triumph and regret. I'd wanted to see him brought low, but actually seeing it wasn't as satisfying as I'd imagined. The revenge didn't heal me. That's what movies and TV get wrong. Getting even doesn't make you whole again. I'm still angry about what he did. I'm still dealing with trust issues and imposter syndrome and fear of powerful people. The satisfaction of watching him fall didn't fix any of that. If anything, it added guilt and moral ambiguity to my existing trauma. I'm more damaged now, not less. If I could go back, I don't know what I'd do differently. Part of me wishes I'd been the bigger person, focused on my own recovery, let karma handle Marcus eventually. Part of me is glad I fought back and refused to be a passive victim. Both impulses exist simultaneously in my head. I'm simultaneously proud of my strategic thinking and ashamed of my cruelty. Human beings are capable of holding contradictory truths. Young chefs sometimes ask me for advice about dealing with abusive head chefs. I never know what to say. The official answer is document everything, report to HR, file complaints, protect yourself legally. That's what I should say. But part of me wants to say, fight back. Don't let bullies win. Make them pay for what they do. I don't say that because I'm not sure it's good advice, even though it's what I actually did. The industry has changed some since Marcus's fall. More awareness about kitchen culture, harassment, abuse of power. Several high-profile chefs have faced consequences for toxic behavior. I'd like to think I contributed to that cultural shift, but I probably didn't. I was just one person taking down one abuser. The bigger changes came from broader movements and more public reckonings. Still, maybe I added to the momentum in some small way. I keep the fake email accounts and personas I created. I don't use them anymore, but I can't bring myself to delete them. They're evidence of what I'm capable of when pushed. A reminder that I'm not as nice or as ethical as I like to think. I've got a dark side, and it's competent and patient and ruthless. That's useful to know about yourself, even if it's uncomfortable. Marcus has apparently told people I'm obsessed with him, that I can't let go of the past. Maybe he's right. I'm the one writing this post years later, still processing what happened. He's probably moved on, focused on his new life. The person who enacted the revenge is more haunted by it than the target. That's ironic and fitting. Revenge is a poison you drink yourself hoping the other person dies. So, that's my confession. I systematically destroyed a celebrity chef's career, marriage, and reputation over 2 years because he wronged me. I used manipulation, strategy, and patience to orchestrate his downfall. I revealed truths at strategic times to maximize damage. I feel both justified and guilty. I'd probably do it again, but I wish I didn't have to. I'm a good chef and a vindictive person, and both things are true. If you're reading this and dealing with a Marcus in your life, I can't tell you what to do. The healthy answer is therapy and legal action, and building your own success is the best revenge. That's what my therapist says. But the honest answer is I don't regret fighting back, even though it cost me something to do it. We all have to live with our choices. I can live with mine, even if I'm not entirely proud of them. The food at my restaurant is really good, by the way. Come try it sometime. I promise I don't poison the people who wrong me. I've got more creative methods than that. I'm joking. Mostly. The point is I'm good at what I do, both cooking and destroying, and I've made peace with being both things. Life is complicated. People are complicated. Sometimes you're the hero, and sometimes you're the villain, and most of the time you're both. That's the truth they don't teach you in culinary school. The aftermath has been stranger than the revenge itself. I've become a sort of underground legend in certain kitchen circles. Young cooks who've been abused by chef tyrants seek me out for advice. They want to know how I did it, how I survived, how I fought back. I'm always careful about what I say. I don't want to encourage anyone else down the path I took, but I also can't pretend I regret standing up for myself. One line cook from Seattle came to my restaurant, specifically to meet me. He'd been working under a Marcus type for 3 years and was breaking down. I sat with him after service and listened to his story. It was eerily similar to mine. The credit stealing, the gaslighting, the systematic destruction of confidence. I gave him the therapist's number and told him to document everything. I didn't tell him about the revenge. Some knowledge is too dangerous to share, but word gets around anyway. Food industry people gossip more than high schoolers. There are theories about what really happened to Marcus. Some people think it was just bad luck and karma. Others suspect a coordinated takedown, but don't know who orchestrated it. A few have figured out it was me based on timeline and motive. Those people either avoid me or respect me from a distance. I've become someone you don't want as an enemy. That reputation is useful, but also isolating. People are careful around me. They don't know if I'm vindictive or just protective. They're not sure if I'll explode and if crossed, or if I'll methodically destroy them over 2 years. The uncertainty works in my favor. Nobody messes with me. But nobody gets too close, either. I've traded vulnerability for power, and I'm not sure it was a good trade. My relationship with cooking has changed too. It used to be pure passion, this beautiful creative outlet that made me feel alive. Now it's tangled up with all this other stuff. Ego and competition and revenge and proving myself. I still love it, but it's complicated love. Every successful dish is partly about the food, and partly about showing Marcus and everyone else that I'm talented. That's exhausting. I've tried to separate my self-worth from my career success, but it's hard when your career almost got destroyed. I'm hyper-vigilant about credit now. If anyone takes credit for my work, I shut it down immediately. I document everything, keep detailed records of who created what. I probably overcompensate, but I'd rather be paranoid than get erased again. Once is enough. The financial recovery has been slow, but steady. I make decent money now as a head chef, but I'm still digging out from those 6 months of unemployment. My credit score is slowly improving. I've got savings again. Small things that feel huge after losing everything. I appreciate financial stability in a way I never did before. Security is precious when you've been without it. Dating has been impossible. How do you explain this story to someone? On our 3rd date, I methodically destroyed a celebrity chef's entire life over 2 years. What's your baggage? Most people don't want to date someone capable of that level of calculated revenge. I don't blame them. I'm not sure I'd date me either. So, I'm alone, which is fine. Maybe safer for everyone involved. I did go on a few dates with a food journalist who knew the whole story. She thought it was fascinating and kind of hot in a dangerous way. We had chemistry, but ultimately she couldn't get past the ethics of it. She said she understood why I did it but couldn't respect the methods. We ended things amicably. She was probably right to run. My family has mixed feelings about what I did. My sister thinks I'm scary and won't let me babysit her kids alone anymore. She's joking, but also not joking. My dad died before all this happened, but my mom knows the broad strokes. She's proud I stood up for myself, but worried about my soul. She's religious and believes in forgiveness and turning the other cheek. I love her, but we see the world very differently. The truth is, I don't believe in turning the other cheek. Maybe that makes me a bad person. I believe in proportional response and consequences for actions. Marcus hurt me deliberately and maliciously. I hurt him back strategically using the truth. If that's wrong, I don't know what justice looks like. Sometimes the systems fail, and you have to create your own justice. That's what I did. I've had nightmares about it, though. Dreams, where I'm the villain, where Marcus is the victim, where I'm prosecuted for what I did. Dreams where he finds out and comes after me legally or physically. I wake up anxious and guilty. My therapist says the dreams are my subconscious processing the moral ambiguity. Great. Even my subconscious is conflicted. There have been moments of doubt. Late nights when I wonder if I'm actually a sociopath. Normal people don't spend 2 years destroying someone, right? Normal people don't feel satisfaction watching someone's marriage implode. My therapist assures me that sociopaths don't question their behavior or feel guilt. The fact that I'm conflicted means I have a conscience. That's comforting, but only somewhat. I've done good things since then, to try to balance the karmic scales. I mentor young chefs for free. I donate to culinary scholarships. I speak out publicly about kitchen abuse and toxic work culture. I'm trying to be a force for positive change in the industry. But I'm also aware that I'm partly doing this to assuage my guilt. Good acts motivated by guilt aren't quite as noble as good acts motivated by pure altruism. The weirdest part is, I've become friends with some of Marcus's other victims. We have a group chat where we share stories and support each other. They know I had something to do with his downfall, but they've never asked directly, and I've never confirmed. We have an unspoken understanding. They're grateful someone stopped him, but also maybe a little afraid of me. It's a strange dynamic. One of them, a pastry chef named Claire, told me I did what she wished she'd been brave enough to do. I told her it wasn't bravery. It was obsession and rage. She said maybe those things can look the same from the outside. She's probably right. The line between courage and recklessness, between justice and revenge, it's thinner than people think. I walked that line for 2 years, and I'm still not sure which side I landed on. I keep tabs on Marcus even now. Not obsessively like before, just occasional Google searches. He's doing okay in LA, cooking for some celebrities, doing some consulting work. He'll never reach his previous heights, but he's not destitute or broken. Part of me is relieved. I wanted to hurt him, not completely destroy him. The fact that he's rebuilding means I didn't go too far. Or at least, that's what I tell myself. I wonder if he knows it was me. Really knows, not just suspects. I wonder if he's done his own digging, connected the dots, figured out the timeline. If he has, he's never confronted me about it. Maybe he knows he can't prove anything. Maybe he's too ashamed to admit he got outmaneuvered. Maybe he genuinely doesn't know and thinks his downfall was just bad luck. I'll probably never know what he knows. There's a part of me that wants to confess to him directly. Sit down face to face and say, yes, I did all of it. And here's why. Get it all out in the open. Have some kind of final confrontation or closure. But that's movie thinking. Real life doesn't work that way. Confessions don't bring peace. They just create new problems. Better to let sleeping dogs lie and move forward with the secret. The secret itself is heavy, though. I've told parts of it to different people, but never the whole story, to anyone except my therapist. And now this anonymous post. Carrying it alone is exhausting. Every time someone praises Marcus's downfall as karma or cosmic justice, I have to bite my tongue. It wasn't karma. It was me. I'm the karma. That's simultaneously empowering and isolating. I've thought about writing a book about it. A memoir, or a fictionalized version. The publishing industry loves a good revenge story, but that would be stupid for so many reasons. Legal exposure, professional consequences, moral judgment from readers. Plus, it would make Marcus a sympathetic figure and I'd be the villain of my own story. Better to let it stay anonymous and unconfirmed. The impact on my mental health has been significant. I have trust issues now, not just about authority figures, but about myself. I don't trust my own anger anymore. I'm afraid of what I'm capable of when I feel wronged. I overanalyze every conflict, every slight, worried I'll spiral into revenge mode again. It's made me overly cautious in relationships and professional disagreements, but it's also made me stronger in some ways. I know I can survive career destruction and financial ruin. I know I can strategize and execute complex plans. I know I'm resilient and resourceful. These aren't necessarily good qualities to have developed through revenge, but they're useful. I'm less afraid of powerful people because I know they're not invincible. I've proven that. The restaurant industry has its own justice system, informal and brutal. Chefs who abuse staff eventually get blacklisted, at least in theory. But in practice, talent often trumps character. Abusive chefs keep getting hired because they produce good food. Marcus was the exception, because his abuses went public at the same time his talent was being questioned. I manufactured that perfect storm. Would he have faced consequences without my interference? Maybe eventually. The Me Too movement hit the restaurant world too. Other abusive chefs got exposed. But timing matters. Without my calculated revelations, Marcus might have retired wealthy and respected before the cultural reckoning caught up with him. I accelerated justice. That's how I justify it to myself. My new restaurant is thriving. 5 stars on multiple review sites. Waiting list for reservations. Talks about Michelin consideration. I'm building the success that should have been mine 3 years ago. It's bittersweet, because I'm doing it alone, when it should have been collaborative. Marcus stole my chance to build this alongside mentors and peers. I had to tear down and rebuild solo. The food I make now is angry food. That's what one critic called it. Bold, uncompromising, challenging. She meant it as a compliment, but she didn't know how accurate it was. Every dish is an act of defiance. Every successful service is proof I survived. The menu is my therapy, and my middle finger to everyone who counted me out. It's the best food I've ever made, because it means something beyond just taste. I employ about 20 people now. I'm hyper-aware of how I treat them. I never yell, never throw things, always give credit where it's due. I'm probably too lenient sometimes, letting mistakes slide that I should address. I'm overcompensating for Marcus's abuse by being the opposite extreme. My sous chef has told me I need to be firmer, but I can't. I'm too afraid of becoming what I hated. The younger cooks who work for me have no idea about my history with Marcus. They just know me as the chef who's weirdly intense about kitchen culture and giving credit. They probably think I'm soft or too idealistic. That's fine. Better they think I'm a pushover than know I'm capable of orchestrating someone's complete destruction. Some secrets protect the innocent. I still have all the documentation from my revenge. Emails, photos, records of every action I took. I keep it on an encrypted drive, hidden in my apartment. I tell myself it's insurance in case Marcus ever comes after me. Really, it's proof that it happened, that I did it, that I'm capable of that level of focus and rage. Sometimes I look through it, just to remember. To remind myself what I am. What I am is complicated. I'm a talented chef, a survivor, a mentor, a friend. I'm also vindictive, calculating, morally flexible, possibly dangerous. All of these things exist simultaneously. I'm not a good person or a bad person. I'm a person who did both good and bad things. That nuance is lost in our culture that wants clear heroes and villains. I'm neither and both. If Marcus walked into my restaurant tomorrow, I don't know what I'd do. Cook for him, refuse service, confront him, ignore him? I've played out all these scenarios in my head hundreds of times. none of them feel right. Maybe there is no right move when you've destroyed someone's life. Maybe the best you can hope for is peaceful coexistence from a distance. The statute of limitations on most of what I could be sued for has probably passed. It's been long enough that even if Marcus figured everything out and had proof, legal action would be difficult. That's a relief. I'm less afraid of consequences than I used to be. Time and success have given me some immunity. But I'm still careful, still anonymous in posts like this, still protective of the secret. So, that's my confession. Fully expanded and completely honest. I systematically destroyed a celebrity chef's career, marriage, and reputation over 2 years because he wronged me. I used manipulation, strategy, and patience to orchestrate his downfall. I revealed truths at strategic times to maximize damage I feel both justified and guilty. I'd probably do it again, but I wish I didn't have to. I'm a good chef and a vindictive person, and both things are true. Story 4. My grandmother passed away 3 months ago, at the age of 92. She was an eccentric woman who I loved dearly, but didn't see very often because she lived 4 states away. We talked on the phone every few weeks, and I visited maybe once a year. She seemed normal enough during our conversations. A little quirky, but normal. When the lawyer called to read her will, I was expecting maybe a few $1,000s, or some jewelry. What I got instead was her entire house and property. A 3-bedroom Victorian home on 2 acres of land in rural Pennsylvania, completely paid off, worth probably $400,000. I was shocked. I have 2 siblings and several cousins. Why me? The lawyer cleared his throat and said there was a condition, a very specific condition, that I had to agree to before I could inherit the property. I had to take care of all 73 cats currently living in the house. I laughed. He didn't. I stopped laughing. 73 cats. My grandmother had 73 cats living in her house, and I had no idea. The lawyer explained that she had been rescuing strays for the past 15 years. She had the whole operation set up. Special cat doors, feeding stations, litter box rooms, plural. She had a vet on retainer. She spent over $3,000 a month on cat food, litter, and medical care. The condition of the inheritance was that I had to maintain the cats for the remainder of their natural lives. I couldn't rehome them, couldn't take them to a shelter, couldn't abandon them. I had to live in the house, or hire someone to live there and provide proper care. If I failed to meet these conditions, the house would be sold, and all proceeds donated to an animal sanctuary. I asked how this was even legal. The lawyer said my grandmother had been very thorough. She'd worked with an attorney who specialized in pet trusts. She'd set aside $200,000 in a trust fund, specifically for cat care. The money could only be used for expenses related to the cats: food, litter, vet bills, property maintenance to keep the house suitable for cats, and salary for a caretaker if I chose to hire one instead of living there myself. I asked what happened if I just said no. He said the house would be sold, cats would go to the sanctuary, and I'd get nothing. My siblings would get nothing. Nobody else was mentioned in the will, except for small amounts to some charities. I had 24 hours to decide. I drove out to Pennsylvania to see the house before making my decision. I hadn't been there in about 3 years. I remembered it as a nice old house, well-maintained, pretty garden. I was not prepared for what I found. The smell hit me from the driveway. Not terrible, not like a hoarder house, but definitely the distinct smell of many cats. I unlocked the door and was immediately swarmed by cats. They were everywhere, on every surface, piece of furniture, windowsill, shelf. Cats sleeping, cats playing, cats grooming, cats staring at me with judgment. I counted as I walked through the house. 73 seemed accurate, maybe more. They all looked healthy and well-fed. The house was actually pretty clean, considering. My grandmother had obviously put serious effort into maintaining the space. There were industrial air purifiers running in every room. The furniture was all covered in washable covers. There were cat trees floor to ceiling. One entire bedroom had been converted into a litter box room. Industrial shelving units holding dozens of litter boxes, all surprisingly clean. An automatic system that I didn't understand, but seemed to involve conveyor belts and some kind of sifting mechanism. Another bedroom was the feeding station, automatic feeders on timers. A massive chest freezer full of cat food, a whiteboard with a feeding schedule, and medical notes for cats with special dietary needs. The third bedroom was the medical room. First aid supplies, medications, records for every single cat with their names, medical histories, and photos. My grandmother had named all 73 cats and could apparently tell them apart. There was Mr. Whiskers, Shadow, Pumpkin, Toast, Bartholomew, Princess Fluffbottom, and 67 others. I sat on the couch and was immediately covered in cats. They were friendly, too friendly. I was being headbutted and purred at from all directions. A large orange cat that I later learned was named Chairman Meow climbed onto my lap and started kneading my legs with his claws. This was insane. I lived in a small apartment in Chicago. I had a full-time job in marketing. I couldn't move to rural Pennsylvania to be a full-time cat caretaker. But $400,000 in property, plus $200,000 in a trust fund? That was life-changing money. Even if I couldn't touch the trust fund, I could live in the house for free, or rent it out eventually after the cats passed away. Cats live what? 15 years? Some of these cats were already old. How long could this commitment really be? I called the lawyer and asked about the details. Could I hire a live-in caretaker? Yes. Could I visit occasionally while someone else handled daily care? Yes. Could I make modifications to the house as long as the cats were cared for? Yes. Could I eventually sell the house after all the cats died? Yes. And at that point, I'd own it free and clear with no conditions. I accepted the inheritance. My family thought I was crazy. My mom said I was throwing my life away for cats. My brother said I should have just declined and let them sell it. Maybe we'd all get something. My sister asked if I'd lost my mind, but none of them were being offered a $400,000 house, so I didn't care what they thought. The first order of business was finding a caretaker. I couldn't move there myself. At least, not right away. I needed someone responsible who liked cats and didn't mind living in a house with 73 of them. I posted ads online and got hundreds of responses. Apparently, there are a lot of people who dream of living rent-free in a nice house in exchange for taking care of cats. I interviewed about 20 candidates and finally found Patricia. Patricia was a retired veterinary technician in her 60s. Her husband had passed away 2 years prior, and she was lonely living alone in her apartment. She loved cats, had experience with medical care, and was extremely organized. She agreed to live in the house full-time in exchange for free rent and a salary of $30,000 a year, paid from the cat trust fund. I had a lawyer draw up a contract. Patricia would handle all daily care, maintain the house, keep records, and contact me immediately if there were any major issues. I would visit once a month to check on everything and handle any financial or legal matters. The trust fund would cover her salary, plus all cat expenses. Patricia moved in, and I went back to Chicago. For the first month, I was anxious constantly. What if she wasn't actually taking care of them? What if something went wrong? What if the whole thing was a disaster? But Patricia sent me daily photos and updates. She was amazing. She learned all 73 cats' names within 2 weeks. She set up a better organizational system. She took 3 cats to the vet in the first month for various minor issues. She started an Instagram account documenting life in the cat house, and it got surprisingly popular. When I visited after the first month, the house was immaculate. The cats were happy and healthy. Patricia had planted a cat-safe garden and set up outdoor enclosed areas so the cats could go outside safely. She'd made friends with the local vet and negotiated a bulk discount on services. She was perfect. That's when things started getting weird. Patricia called me one day and said we needed to talk about something strange. 3 different people had showed up at the house asking about the cats. They claimed my grandmother had promised them specific cats. One woman insisted that a cat named Duchess was supposed to be hers. A man said my grandmother had agreed to give him Spartacus when she passed. Another person wanted Sir Fluffington. I told Patricia to send them away. Per the will, I couldn't rehome any cats. But they kept coming. More and more people claiming my grandmother had made promises. Some had emails or text messages as proof. Others just insisted they had verbal agreements. I contacted the lawyer. He said unless something was in writing and properly documented, these people had no legal claim. The will was clear. All cats stayed with the house. Then I started getting threatening letters. People saying I was going against my grandmother's wishes, that she'd wanted certain cats to go to certain people. One person threatened to sue. Another said they'd report me for animal hoarding. I did some investigating and discovered that my grandmother had been part of an extensive network of cat rescuers online. She was apparently well known in these communities. People had been following her cat updates for years. Some had donated money to help with vet bills. Others had helped her trap and rescue strays. When she died, these people felt entitled to the cats they'd helped rescue, or had formed attachments to through photos and videos. They thought I was some greedy grandkid who swooped in and stole their cats. I tried to explain the situation on the Instagram account Patricia had started. I posted about the will, the conditions, the trust fund. I thought transparency would help. It made things worse. I got accused of exploiting my grandmother's death for money. People said I should honor her real wishes, not some legal document. The comments got nasty. Then someone doxed me, posted my full name, my work address, my phone number. I started getting calls at all hours. People yelling at me about cats. Someone called my boss and said I was abusing animals. I had to have an awkward conversation with HR about my inheritance situation. Patricia was getting harassed, too. People showing up at the house at all hours. Someone tried to break in through a window, claiming they were rescuing a cat from illegal captivity. Patricia called the police and got a restraining order against the most aggressive people. This went on for months. I was stressed constantly. I started wondering if the inheritance was even worth it. Maybe I should just give up. Let them sell the house, donate everything to the sanctuary, and be done with it. But then something shifted. The reasonable people in the cat rescue community started speaking up. They pointed out that my grandmother had made her wishes clear in her will, that the cats were being well cared for, that Patricia was doing an amazing job and posting proof daily, that people needed to respect the deceased's final decisions, even if they disagreed. The harassment slowed down. People started apologizing. Some even offered to help with costs or volunteer work. The Instagram account grew to 50,000 followers who loved seeing daily cat updates. Patricia started doing educational content about cat care. She'd show how to trim nails, give medications, recognize health issues. The account became genuinely useful and popular. People sent gifts for the cats. Toys, beds, treats. We had to set up a P.O. box because so much stuff was arriving. 6 months in, 3 of the older cats passed away from natural causes. It was sad, but they'd been elderly and had good deaths at home with Patricia caring for them. 70 cats remaining. The trust fund was actually growing. The investments my grandmother had chosen were doing well, and with Patricia's efficient management and the bulk discounts she'd negotiated, we were spending less than the trust fund was earning. At this rate, the money would last decades. I started visiting more often because I genuinely enjoyed it. The house was peaceful. Patricia was great company. The cats were entertaining. I'd spend weekends there working remotely, surrounded by purring furballs. My job went fully remote during the pandemic, and I realized I didn't need to live in Chicago anymore. I talked to Patricia about moving into the house with her. She was thrilled to have company. We converted the attic into a nice office space for me. So now, I live in a house with 70 cats and a 60-something roommate who's become like a second grandmother to me. I work from home doing marketing consulting. Patricia handles most of the cat care, but I help out. I've learned all their names. I have favorites, though I'd never admit that publicly. The Instagram account is up to 200,000 followers. We've started a YouTube channel. The ad revenue goes into the trust fund. We're making enough that we've started a grant program to help other people afford vet care for their cats. My apartment in Chicago is being rented out. That income, plus my consulting work, plus the weird internet fame from the cats, means I'm actually doing really well financially. And I'll eventually inherit a $400,000 house free and clear. My family still thinks I'm weird. My mom asks when I'm going to get a real job and move back to civilization. My brother makes jokes about me being a crazy cat person. But whatever. I'm happy. I'm financially stable. I'm doing something meaningful. 68 cats now. 2 more passed last month. Both very old. At this rate, I'll probably be in my 50s before they're all gone. But honestly, I'm okay with that. This weird inheritance that seemed like a burden has become my whole life in the best way. Patricia and I are talking about writing a book about the experience. We've already been contacted by a few production companies about a possible documentary or reality show. Apparently, Woman Inherits House Full of Cats is compelling content. The house needs a new roof next year. The trust fund will cover it. We're also building a heated outdoor catio so the cats can enjoy winter safely. We're installing solar panels to reduce energy costs. We're planning long-term because we're in this for the long haul. I never expected my life to turn out this way. I was a regular marketing person in Chicago with a normal life. Now I'm a semi-famous cat caretaker living in rural Pennsylvania with my elderly roommate and 68 cats. But you know what? My grandmother knew what she was doing. She knew I was responsible enough to honor her wishes. She knew I was struggling financially in Chicago and needed a break. She knew I needed a purpose beyond corporate marketing. She left me her house and her cats, and in doing so gave me a completely new life. A weird life. A life that makes no sense to most people. But it's mine, and I love it. Chairman Meow just jumped on my keyboard, so I'm going to end this here. He's very demanding and will knock things off my desk if I don't give him attention immediately. 68 hiss. A whole house, a trust fund, an Instagram following, and somehow the weirdest inheritance ever turned into the best thing that's happened to me. Thanks, Grandma. You were crazy, but you were also kind of a genius. Story 5. I need to get this off my chest because the NDAs are finally expiring, and I can legally talk about this insanity. 5 years ago, I was a 27-year-old graphic designer working for a mid-sized marketing firm in Seattle. Nothing special, decent pay, boring work, the usual corporate grind. I had no ambitions beyond maybe making senior designer one day and affording a nicer apartment. What happened next was completely unintentional and absolutely changed my life in ways I'm still processing. It started with a LinkedIn message. I got contacted by a recruiter for what seemed like a dream job at a major tech company. Better pay, better benefits, equity options, the works. I went through 5 rounds of interviews and got the offer. I was ecstatic. 2 weeks' notice at my old job, goodbye party, the whole thing. My last day was a Friday, and I was set to start the new position on Monday. That weekend, I got an email from the new company's HR saying there had been a mistake. They'd accidentally sent the offer to the wrong person. Someone with my exact same name had been the intended recipient. They were extremely apologetic, but the offer was being rescinded. I was devastated. I'd already quit my old job. I'd signed a lease on a new apartment based on the higher salary. I'd turned down other opportunities. I called my old boss begging for my job back, but they'd already hired my replacement. I was unemployed, nearly broke, and panicking. That Monday, instead of starting my dream job, I was sitting in my empty new apartment, applying to anything I could find. I was desperate. Here's where it gets weird. That same Monday morning, I got another email welcoming me to the company and providing login credentials for their systems. It was from the new company, the one that had rescinded my offer. I figured it was an automated email that hadn't been updated in their system. I tried to log in just out of curiosity, thinking it wouldn't work. It did. I had full access to everything. Their internal networks, project management systems, confidential files, everything. I should have reported it immediately. I know that now. But I was angry and hurt and curious. I started poking around. I told myself I'd just look for a few minutes and then report the error. But then I found something interesting. The person they'd meant to hire, the other person with my name, was starting a competitive intelligence role. Their job was literally to research competitors and report on their strategies. I found their onboarding documents, their job description, everything. And I had an idea. A stupid, reckless, probably illegal idea. What if I just did the job? Not officially, obviously. But what if I did the research they wanted and submitted it anonymously through their systems? I had access. I had the skills. I had way too much free time being unemployed. The worst that could happen was they'd ignore it or figure out what was going on and revoke my access. I had nothing to lose at that point. So, I did it. I spent that entire week researching their main competitor, compiled a detailed report, and uploaded it to their project management system under the other person's name. Nothing happened for 3 days. Then I got an automated email thanking me for my submission and noting that my report had been forwarded to senior management. Then another email with a performance bonus notification. They'd paid $1,500 into a bank account for exceptional work. Except it wasn't my bank account. It was the other person's account. But I had their employee ID and access to their payroll information. This is where I really crossed the line. I set up a separate bank account, using a business name I created. Then I used my system access to change the routing information for bonuses and expenses to go to my account instead. I told myself it was just for this one bonus, just to see if it would work. And then I'd stop. The money hit my account 2 days later. $1,500 for maybe 10 hours of work. It felt surreal. It felt wrong. It also felt like the universe giving me a break after screwing me over. I should have stopped. Any rational person would have stopped. But I didn't. I kept doing it. Every week I'd submit intelligence reports, market analyses, competitive breakdowns. I got better and faster at it. I learned what they wanted and how they wanted it formatted. The bonuses kept coming. $500 here, $2,000 there, sometimes $5,000 for bigger projects. I was making more money from this accidental fraud than I would have made in the actual job. This went on for 8 months. 8 months of me pretending to be an employee I'd never met, doing work I was never hired to do, and getting paid for it. I was living in constant fear of getting caught, but also couldn't stop. The money was too good, and I'd fallen into a routine. I'd wake up, research for a few hours, submit my work, and wait for the payment. I picked up some freelance design work to have a legitimate income to report on taxes, but the spy work was my main gig. The real employee, the person they'd actually hired, was apparently terrible at their job. I found out later they'd been fired after 4 months for poor performance, but because I was still submitting quality work under their credentials, nobody realized there was a problem. The systems showed excellent work being delivered. The payments kept processing. I'd accidentally created the perfect cover paidi by being good at a job I didn't officially have. Around month 9, I started getting sloppy. I got too confident. I submitted a report that was too detailed, too good. It caught the attention of a VP who wanted to meet with the analyst who'd produced it. That analyst, according to their records, didn't work there anymore. Suddenly, red flags went up everywhere. ITI started investigating. They traced the logins back to IP addresses that didn't match any company location. They audited the payment records and found the routing changes. They figured out someone had been accessing their systems and impersonating a former employee. I knew I was caught when my access suddenly stopped working one Tuesday morning. I tried to log in and got an error message. My heart dropped. I waited for the police to show up at my door. Days went by. Nothing. A week. Still nothing. Then 2 weeks later, I got a letter from a law firm representing the company. They knew what I'd done. They had evidence. They were prepared to pursue criminal charges for fraud, identity theft, unauthorized computer access, and about a dozen other things that could land me in federal prison. But they had a proposal. The work I'd submitted had been valuable. Extremely valuable. Some of my intelligence reports had directly influenced major business decisions that made the company millions. They were in a weird position where prosecuting me would expose how badly their internal systems had failed. It would be embarrassing. So, they offered a deal. I would pay back half of what I'd made, sign NDAs that would make my head spin, agree to consult for them legitimately for 1 year. And in exchange, they wouldn't press charges. I'd made about $600,000 over those months. Paying back $300,000 hurt, but it was better than prison. I signed everything they put in front of me. The consulting gig was actually legitimate and paid well, though not as well as my accidental fraud had. They had me working on the same type of competitive intelligence, but with proper oversight and legal boundaries. It was surreal sitting in meetings with people who had no idea I was the person who'd scammed their company. During that year, I learned the full extent of what had happened. The original recruiter who'd contacted me had made an error in their database. My profile and the other person's profile had been merged somehow. When they realized the mistake and rescinded my offer, HR had processed it, but IT never revoked the system access because I was never officially in the system to begin with. I'd existed in a weird digital limbo where I had access but no official employee record. The other person had been given different credentials when they actually started, so there were essentially 2 accounts for 1 position. The VP who'd caught me became a weird mentor figure. He was impressed by my work and amused by the audacity of the whole thing. He said in his 30 years in business he'd never seen anything like it. He's the one who pushed for the consulting deal instead of prosecution. We still get coffee occasionally, and he still brings it up as the craziest story in his career. He helped me transition into legitimate consulting work after my year was up. The money I got to keep, about $300,000 after paying back half, changed my life. I paid off my student loans. I bought a small condo. I invested the rest. And now that money has grown significantly. I eventually started my own competitive intelligence consulting firm, doing legally what I'd stumbled into doing illegally. Turns out there's a huge market for corporate intelligence if you're good at it, and operate within the law. I make great money now, and sleep better at night, knowing I'm not committing multiple felonies. The guilt took a long time to process. I saw a therapist for 2 years, dealing with the stress and ethical implications. I'd committed serious crimes because I was desperate and opportunistic. I got incredibly lucky that the company decided prosecution wasn't worth the embarrassment. In any other circumstance, I'd be a convicted felon. The therapist helped me understand that while what I did was wrong, I'd made things right by paying back the money and using the experience to build something legitimate. My family still doesn't know the full story. They think I got hired as a consultant after impressing someone with my freelance work. My parents are proud of my success and have no idea their son was briefly a corporate criminal. My sister knows something happened because she helped me with the legal documents, but I never told her the details. The fewer people who know, the better, even with the NDAs expiring. The other person, the one they'd actually meant to hire, I looked them up out of curiosity. They're doing fine, working at a different company in a different field. I sometimes wonder if they know their identity was used for this whole scheme. The company probably never told them. Why would they? It would just raise questions about their security and make everyone look bad. The experience taught me a lot about corporate vulnerabilities. Most big companies have terrible internal controls. They trust their systems too much and verify too little. If someone has the right credentials, most employees assume they're supposed to be there. I exploited that trust and those weak systems. Since going legitimate, I've actually helped companies improve their security and internal processes. I know all the vulnerabilities because I used them. I've been approached by journalists a few times over the years, wanting to write about corporate fraud. I always decline. The NDAs are legally expired, but talking publicly would be stupid. It would harm my current business and potentially expose me to civil suits from other parties. This is the first time I'm sharing the story somewhat publicly, and even then, I'm being vague about identifying details. The company, the people involved, the exact timelines, all slightly altered to protect everyone, including myself. Looking back, it was the stupidest and luckiest thing I've ever done. Stupid, because I could have ruined my entire life. Lucky because I somehow came out ahead. If I could go back, I'm honestly not sure what I'd tell my younger self. Don't do it because it's wrong and dangerous, or do it because it led to where I am now. The ethical part of me says I should regret everything. The practical part of me knows that without that experience, I'd probably still be a mid-level designer somewhere, making a fraction of what I make now. The corporate world is weird and broken in ways most people don't see. There are so many cracks in the system that people could exploit if they wanted to. Most people don't because they're honest, or afraid, or both. I wasn't afraid enough and I wasn't honest enough, at least not for those 8 months. I justified it by telling myself the company could afford it, that they'd screwed me first, that I was providing value. All rationalizations for behavior I knew was wrong. There have been consequences beyond the legal ones. I have trouble trusting systems now. I see vulnerabilities everywhere. I can't use a company's internal network without mentally cataloging all the ways it could be exploited. It's made me better at my job, but worse at relaxing. I'm always thinking about security and access, and who has permission to do what. My girlfriend jokes that I'm paranoid, but she doesn't know why I'm this way. The consulting work I do now is satisfying, in a way the fraud never was. Knowing I'm doing something legitimate, that I'm helping companies compete fairly, that I'm not looking over my shoulder constantly, It's worth more than the money ever was. I make less per hour than I did during my fraud days, but I make it consistently and legally. I have contracts and clients and a reputation. I'm building something real instead of running a scam. I've thought about writing a book about corporate security vulnerabilities, using my experience as a case study without admitting it was me. A kind of cautionary tale about how easy it is to exploit weak systems. My lawyer advised against it. Too much risk of someone connecting dots. So instead, I just work with companies privately, showing them their vulnerabilities before someone malicious finds them. I've probably prevented more fraud than I committed at this point, if that matters. The weirdest part is the imposter syndrome. I made my initial money as a literal imposter, and now that I'm legitimate, I sometimes feel like I'm still faking it. Like someone's going to expose me as a fraud, even though I'm not doing anything fraudulent anymore. My therapist says it's a normal response to trauma and guilt. The brain doesn't easily separate past actions from present identity. I'm working on it. 5 years later, I'm in a good place. I have a successful business, healthy relationships, financial security. I'm not proud of how I got here, but I'm proud of what I've built since. I paid my debt to the company. I've lived under NDAs and the constant low-level fear of exposure. I've dealt with the guilt and the ethical implications. I've tried to make amends by helping companies protect themselves from people like I used to be. The process of building my legitimate consulting business was harder than I expected. My first clients were small startups who couldn't afford the big firms. I'd pitch them on competitive intelligence, and they'd look at me like I was trying to sell them something illegal. I had to learn how to explain that what I do is standard business practice, just done really well. Market research, competitor analysis, industry trends, all legal and ethical. It took months to land my first real contract. That first legitimate contract was with a medium-sized tech company that wanted to understand their competitor's product roadmap. I did everything by the book. Public filings, press releases, customer reviews, industry reports, trade show observations. No hacking, no impersonation, no fraud. Just good, old-fashioned research and analysis. When I delivered the report, the CEO was blown away. He asked me how I got such detailed insights legally. I told him it's amazing what you can learn when you know where to look and how to connect the dots. Word of mouth is powerful in the consulting world. That CEO recommended me to 3 other companies. Those 3 recommended me to others. Within a year, I had more work than I could handle. I hired my first employee, then my second. Now I have a team of 6 analysts who do the same kind of work I started doing. None of them know about my past. They think I learned this trade through traditional means. In a way, I did. I just had a very untraditional learning experience. The imposter syndrome got worse as my business grew. I'd be in pitch meetings with Fortune 500 companies and think about how I used to be a fraud. I'd sit across from executives trusting me with confidential information and wonder what they'd do if they knew. My therapist worked with me on separating my past actions from my current identity. She pointed out that I've now done years of legitimate work that has nothing to do with what I did wrong. I'm not defined by my worst choices if I've made better choices since. There was a close call about 3 years into running my business. I was at an industry conference and ran into someone who worked at the company I'd defrauded. We were in an elevator together, and he was looking at my name tag. I could see him trying to place why my name seemed familiar. My heart was racing. He finally said I looked familiar and asked if we'd met. I lied and said I must have one of those faces. He shrugged and got off the elevator. I avoided him the rest of the conference and left early. That incident sent me into a spiral for weeks. I became convinced someone would recognize me, put the pieces together, expose everything. I'd built my business on a foundation of fraud, and it felt like it could collapse any moment. My girlfriend at the time noticed I was acting strange, I told her I was stressed about work, which was true, just not the full truth. We broke up a few months later. She said I was emotionally unavailable. She was right. I was too busy protecting my secrets to let anyone in. The financial aspects were complicated too. I had to be very careful about how I reported everything to the IRS. The money I'd paid back to the company was documented properly. The money I'd kept was technically income from an illegal activity, which you're still supposed to report. My accountant helped me navigate it without asking too many questions. I paid taxes on everything. The IRS doesn't care where money comes from as long as you pay what you owe. I probably overpaid out of paranoia. Building wealth from that seed money felt tainted at first. Every time I checked my investment accounts and saw the growth, I'd remember where the initial capital came from. But over time, as the legitimate business money mixed with and exceeded the fraud money, it got easier. Now, 5 years later, the vast majority of my net worth is from legal work. The original $300,000 has been diluted by so much legitimate income that it barely matters mathematically. Psychologically, it still matters. I've become an expert on corporate espionage, both legal and illegal. Companies hire me to assess their vulnerabilities, and I tell them honestly what someone could do if they wanted to hurt them. I know all the tricks because I've used or seen most of them. The difference now is I'm helping companies defend against those tactics instead of using them. It's like being a reformed hacker who goes into cybersecurity. The knowledge is valuable regardless of how it was acquired. One of my biggest clients is actually a competitor of the company I defrauded. The irony isn't lost on me. I help them understand what their competitors, including my former victim, are doing. It's all legal and ethical now, but there are moments where I think about how weird my career path has been. From accidentally defrauding a company to legitimately helping their competitor. The corporate world is small and interconnected in strange ways. I've thought about reaching out to the VP, who gave me the second chance. We lost touch after my consulting contract ended. Part of me wants to thank him for not destroying my life when he could have. Part of me thinks reaching out would just remind him of the whole mess. I looked him up on LinkedIn recently. He retired last year. He never knew that his decision to push for a deal instead of prosecution would lead to me building a successful business. Maybe I'll send him a letter someday. The ethical questions still haunt me sometimes. I took money that wasn't mine. I impersonated someone. I accessed systems without authorization. Those are facts. But I also provided value. My work helped the company make good decisions. They profited from my intelligence reports. Does that make it less wrong? My therapist says I'm trying to justify past actions instead of just accepting them and moving forward. She's probably right. I do that a lot. There are things I learned during those 8 months that I can't unlearn. I see the world differently now. I notice security gaps everywhere. I see how easy it would be to exploit trust and access in most organizations. It's made me cynical about corporate security and human nature. Most fraud isn't sophisticated. It's just people exploiting obvious vulnerabilities that nobody thought to protect against. I was just a desperate graphic designer who stumbled into a system flaw. Imagine what someone with actual criminal intent could do. My current employees are good people doing good work. Training them has been rewarding. I teach them research techniques, analysis frameworks, industry knowledge. I never teach them the illegal shortcuts I know. I want them to build careers they can be proud of without the baggage I carry. Sometimes they ask me how I got so good at competitive intelligence. I tell them it takes years of practice and learning from mistakes. That's not a lie, just not the whole truth. The anxiety about being exposed has decreased, but it never fully gone away. Every new client could be someone who recognizes my name. Every conference could be the place where I run into the wrong person. Every email could be from a journalist who's connected the dots. I've learned to live with that low-level paranoia. It's the price I pay for the choices I made. Some people have skeletons in their closet. Mine just happens to be corporate fraud. Dating has been complicated. When do you tell someone about your past? First date seems too early. 6th month seems too late. I've tried both approaches. Early disclosure scares people off. Late disclosure makes them feel lied to. I'm currently single, and honestly, it's easier this way. No one to hide from. No one to disappoint when they learn the truth. My therapist says I'm self-sabotaging. She's probably right about that too. I've donated a lot of money to charity over the years. Is it guilt money? Probably. Does it help me feel better? Sometimes. I've funded scholarships for design students, supported legal aid organizations, contributed to corporate ethics programs. I can't undo what I did, but I can try to put good back into the world. It's not absolution, but it's something. My accountant loves the tax deductions. I love feeling like less of a bad person. The skills I gained during my fraud period are honestly impressive in hindsight. I taught myself advanced research techniques, data analysis, report writing, competitive frameworks, all while operating under extreme pressure and secrecy. I turned myself into an expert through necessity and desperation. If I'd pursued that knowledge legitimately through a traditional career path, it would have taken a decade. I compressed it into 8 intense months. Crime doesn't pay, except when it accidentally does, and then you have to live with the consequences forever. There have been moments where I've almost told the whole story, publicly. Write a Medium post, start a podcast, do a conference talk, get it all out in the open. But the risks outweigh the benefits. I'd lose clients. I'd face judgment. I might even face new legal challenges from parties I haven't considered. The NDAs may have expired, but common sense says keep your mouth shut. So I do. This anonymous post is as close as I'll get to public confession. The company I defrauded is doing fine, by the way. They're bigger than ever. Their stock has tripled since my fraud days. My $300,000 was a rounding error in their quarterly budget. That doesn't make what I did right, but it does make me feel slightly less terrible. I didn't hurt a small business or real people directly. I exploited a massive corporation's bad systems. Still wrong, but different shades of wrong exist. I wonder sometimes about parallel universes where I made different choices. One where I reported the system access immediately and stayed unemployed. One where I got caught immediately and went to prison. One where I never got caught and am still doing it. This universe, where I got caught but got a second chance, seems like the best possible outcome of a bad situation. I'm grateful for that, even while accepting responsibility for creating the situation in the first place. My relationship with money has changed. I used to stress about every dollar when I was a broke designer. Then I had more money than I knew what to do with from fraud. Then I had to give half back. Now I make good money legitimately, and I'm almost too careful with it. I save aggressively, invest conservatively, spend minimally. My financial advisor says I have the money habits of someone who lived through the Depression. I tell him I lived through something that felt like a personal depression. Close enough. The consultancy has become something I'm genuinely proud of. We do good work. We help companies compete fairly. We follow all the rules. We have a reputation for quality and ethics. That reputation took years to build and would evaporate instantly if my past came out. So I protect it fiercely. I've turned down work that seemed even slightly questionable. I've fired clients who wanted me to cross ethical lines. I overcompensate for my past by being extremely careful in my present. Looking at my life now versus 5 years ago, I'm almost unrecognizable. Better apartment, better car, better job, better financial security, worse sleep, worse trust issues, worse anxiety. It's a trade-off. I'm materially successful and psychologically damaged. My therapist says that's reductive. People are complex. We can be multiple things at once. I can be a successful consultant and a former criminal, a good boss and a bad role model, a generous donor and a selfish fraud. We contain multitudes. So, that's my confession. I accidentally became a corporate spy, made over $500,000 through fraud and impersonation, got caught, paid back half, and somehow turned it into a legitimate career. It's not a story I'm proud of, but it's my story. If there's a moral here, it's probably don't commit fraud, even if you think you can get away with it. But also, corporate systems are way more vulnerable than anyone wants to admit. And sometimes, very rarely, people do get second chances they probably don't deserve. I got mine, and I'm trying not to waste it. Every day I work is a day I'm trying to earn the forgiveness I probably don't deserve. It's exhausting and necessary, and the best I can do. Story 6. I'm a 36-year-old single woman who finally saved enough to buy my first house. Real estate in my area is insane, so I had to go for a fixer-upper. The house I bought was built in 1912, vacant for 2 years. Needed serious work, but had good bones. I got it for a steal at auction. The previous owner died with no heirs, and the estate just wanted it gone. I was excited to renovate and make it mine. That was 4 months ago. Now I'm terrified in my own home because I found a hidden room behind my basement wall, and someone has been living in it. Recently. Maybe still. I don't know what to do, and I'm scared to stay, but scared to leave. The house is a 3-story Victorian in a decent neighborhood. It had been empty since the owner died in 2022. The estate did minimal maintenance. When I bought it, the place was dusty and outdated, but structurally sound. I knew I'd need to update electrical, plumbing, cosmetic stuff. I budgeted for 6 months of renovation while living in the house. I moved in immediately because my lease was ending and I couldn't afford to pay rent and a mortgage. So, I've been living in construction chaos, doing some work myself and hiring contractors for the big stuff. The basement was last on my renovation list. It's unfinished. Stone walls, dirt floor in some areas, old coal chute, basically just storage and utilities. I wasn't planning to do much down there beyond cleaning and maybe some waterproofing. But 3 weeks ago, I was measuring the basement to plan storage solutions when I noticed something odd. The dimensions didn't match the first floor. The basement was about 8 feet shorter on one end. There should have been more space. I thought maybe the foundation was irregular, or there was a structural reason. But it bothered me. I started tapping on walls, looking for hollow spots. On the north wall, behind some old shelving units I'd moved aside, the stone sounded different. More hollow. I pulled away some of the shelving and saw that the stone pattern was slightly off, like this section had been added or modified. I pushed on it. Nothing. But when I felt along the edges, I found a seam. It was disguised well, but it was there. This wall section was separate from the rest. I looked for a mechanism, or opening. Took me an hour, but I finally found it. A loose stone that, when pulled, released a catch. Part of the wall swung inward. Behind it was a room, about 8 by 12 feet, with a ceiling height of maybe 7 feet. It was hidden completely from the basement. You'd never know it was there unless you were looking. The room had electricity, a working bulb hanging from the ceiling. It had ventilation through a small duct that must have connected to the main system, and it had been used recently. Very recently. There was a sleeping bag on a cot, bottles of water, food wrappers, books, a bucket in the corner for waste. Someone had been living here. I stood in the doorway, frozen. My first thought was squatter. Someone had been using my house while it was vacant, but the estate had shown the house multiple times before the auction. I'd walked through it twice myself. Nobody mentioned a hidden room, because nobody knew it was there. This room was built to be secret, and someone had been using it. I checked the sleeping bag. It wasn't dusty. The water bottles weren't expired. The food wrappers were recent dates. Someone had been here within the last few weeks, maybe days. I called the police. They came and searched. They were as confused as I was. They documented everything, took photos, checked for prints. They said it was likely a squatter who'd found the hidden room and used it while the house was vacant. Now that I owned the house and was living here, they'd probably moved on. The police cleared the house, checked all the entry points, found no signs of forced entry. They said to change the locks, install a security system, and call if I saw any signs of the person returning. Then, they left. I should have felt better, but I didn't, because there were details that didn't fit the squatter theory. The room was too well set up. It had been hidden deliberately with the false wall and hidden catch. That took construction knowledge and time. It wasn't something a random squatter could create. This room had been built into the house at some point. Maybe when it was constructed. Maybe later. But it was intentional, and someone knew about it. Someone who'd been using it recently. I went through everything in the room more carefully after the police left. The books were library books, overdue from a local branch, mystery novels and survival guides. The food was non-perishable stuff from convenience stores, nothing requiring cooking. The sleeping bag was decent quality, not cheap. There were clothes in a bag. Men's clothes, size medium. A flashlight with working batteries. A notebook. That's what disturbed me most. The notebook. It was a journal. Handwritten entries dating back 6 months. I read it. I know I shouldn't have, but I needed to understand who had been in my house. The entries were rambling and paranoid. The person, who signed entries as D, was hiding from someone or something. They wrote about feeling safe in the hidden room, about watching the house showings from inside the walls, about hearing potential buyers walk around, while they stayed silent in the secret room. They wrote about me specifically, about the day I won the auction, about watching me move in, about listening to my footsteps above. They'd been here the whole time I'd been living here, watching, listening, hiding in the walls. I felt sick. For 2 months, someone had been living in my basement while I slept upstairs. They'd been here during contractor visits, during inspections, during everything. How had nobody noticed? The entries explained it. D was careful. They only moved around when I was out or asleep. They used the bathroom bucket and disposed of waste during my work hours. They got food and water when I was gone. They'd observed my schedule and adapted to it. I'd been living with a hidden roommate and never knew. The most recent entry was dated 5 days before I found the room. It said, "She's getting close. She's been measuring and looking at walls. I need to leave soon. But where will I go? This is the only place I've felt safe in months. Maybe I can talk to her. Explain. Maybe she'd understand. But probably not. Nobody understands." The entry ended there. So D had left before I found the room. Or had they? The police didn't find anyone. But what if D was just better at hiding than the police were at searching? I changed all the locks that day. I installed cameras, motion sensors, door alarms. I turned that house into a fortress. I sealed the hidden room's door so it couldn't open from inside. I told my friends and family about it. They said I should sell the house and move. Maybe they're right. But I can't afford to sell at a loss. And I just got here. This is my home. I shouldn't have to leave because someone was squatting. Except, it feels like more than squatting. It feels like invasion. Violation. My safe space isn't safe. The first few nights after the discovery, I barely slept. Every sound was Dee coming back. Every creak was someone in the walls. I kept all the lights on. I had friends stay over. I was paranoid and exhausted. Slowly, as days passed with no signs of intrusion, I started to relax. Maybe Dee really had left. Maybe the police were right, and it was just a squatter who'd moved on. I started sleeping better. Started feeling like maybe things would be okay. Then 2 weeks after I found the room, I came home from work, and things were moved. Small things. A cup I'd left on the counter was in the sink. A book on my coffee table was opened to a different page. My bedroom door was closed when I'd left it open. They were subtle changes. Things I might have done myself and forgotten. But I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. Someone had been in my house. Dee had come back. I checked the cameras. Nothing. All the entry points were secure. No signs of forced entry. But someone had been inside. The only explanation was they'd never left. They were still here. Hiding somewhere I hadn't found. Maybe there were more hidden rooms. Maybe the walls were full of spaces I didn't know about. This 1912 house could have a dozen secret spots. I'd only found one. Dee could be anywhere. I hired a contractor who specializes in old houses. Told him I wanted a complete assessment of all the walls and spaces. He brought equipment to scan for voids and hidden areas. We found 2 more hidden spaces. One was a small gap between the first and second floor, accessible through a panel in a closet. The other was a crawl space under the front porch. Both showed signs of recent use. Blankets, food, water. Dee had multiple hiding spots. Dee had been living in my walls in multiple locations. The contractor was disturbed. He said he'd never seen anything like it. He asked if I wanted to seal all the spaces. I said yes. We sealed everything we found. But I still don't feel safe. Because what if there are more spaces we didn't find? What if Dee is still here, in some gap in the walls we haven't discovered? Old houses are full of odd construction. Dead spaces. Voids. Places humans can fit if they're determined. Dee is determined. Dee needs this house for some reason. And I can't find them, or stop them, or prove they're still here. I'm living in a house that might have a person in the walls. That's psychological horror. I started researching the house's history, trying to understand why it would have hidden rooms. What I found was unsettling. The original owner in 1912 was a doctor. He built the house with his own architectural input. There are old newspaper articles about him. He was into spiritualism and secret societies, Freemasons, and other fraternal organizations. The hidden rooms might have been for meetings or rituals. Or they might have been panic rooms, before that was a common concept. The house was designed with secrets built in. Over a century later, those secrets are being used in ways the builder never intended. The doctor died in the house in 1945. After that, it had several owners. I found records of most of them. One family lived here for 30 years, another for 15. Short-term owners after that. Then the last owner who bought it in 2008 and died in 2022. That's when it became vacant until I bought it. I tried to find information about the last owner. He was a recluse. Died of natural causes in his sleep. No family. No close friends. Just a lonely old man in a big house. Did he know about the hidden rooms? Did he use them? Did Dee know him? I found Dee's real name through the library books. They were checked out to Daniel Morse. I searched for him. Found a few possibilities, but one seemed right. Daniel Morse, 34, reported missing 3 months ago. His family filed a report. He'd been struggling with mental health issues and paranoia. They thought he might hurt himself. Police searched Aid but found no trace. He'd vanished. If this is the same Daniel, he didn't vanish. He's been hiding. In my walls. In multiple houses, maybe. Living like a ghost. Avoiding whatever or whoever he thinks is after him. I contacted his family through the missing persons report. Spoke to his sister. I explained I might have information about Daniel. She was desperate and grateful. I told her about finding signs someone had been living in my hidden room. I didn't tell her he might still be there. I showed her the handwriting in the journal. She confirmed it was Daniel's. She asked to meet. We met at a coffee shop. She told me about her brother. Daniel had always been anxious and paranoid, but it got worse over the last year. He became convinced people were following him, watching him. He thought his apartment was bugged. He stopped going to work, stopped answering his phone. When family visited, he wouldn't let them in. He'd talk through the door about needing to hide, to disappear. Then one day he was just gone. His apartment was empty. No note. No signs of where he went. They'd been searching for months, fearing the worst. I told her everything. The hidden rooms, the journal entries, the signs he might still be in my house. She cried. She wanted to come search for him, to call out to him and bring him home. I said I didn't think that would work. If he's hiding, he won't come out for anyone. He's deep in paranoia. He thinks he's protecting himself by staying hidden. She asked what we should do. I said I didn't know. Call the police again? They'd already searched and found nothing. Try to lure him out? How? This was beyond my capability to handle. We decided to leave food and water in the sealed hidden room, along with a note from his sister, begging him to come home, promising he was safe, providing phone numbers and addresses. We left it and waited. The food disappeared, the water too. But the note was left behind, unread or ignored. Daniel was still there, still taking what he needed, still hiding, still afraid. His sister was distraught. Her brother was 10 feet away but unreachable. I made a decision. I told Daniel's sister I was selling the house. I couldn't live like this. The constant awareness that someone was in the walls, the fear, the invasion of privacy, the inability to feel safe in my own home. I'd take the financial loss. I'd find somewhere else. She understood. She said she'd buy the house. She wanted to be close to her brother, even if she couldn't reach him. She could pay what I paid for it. I'd break even at least. But before I could start that process, something changed. I came home one evening, and Daniel was sitting in my living room. He was thin, dirty, clearly unwell, but calm. He looked at me and said, "I'm sorry." He said he knew he'd scared me. That wasn't his intent. He just needed somewhere safe. The hidden rooms had saved his life, but he knew he couldn't stay anymore. He was ready to leave, ready to get help. His sister had left her number in the note. He'd called her. She was on her way. We sat in awkward silence, waiting for his sister. I didn't know what to say. He looked fragile, like he might bolt any second. I offered him food and water. He accepted. He ate like he was starving. Maybe he was. Living in walls doesn't provide regular meals. His sister arrived 20 minutes later. She broke down seeing him. He cried too. They held each other. She convinced him to go to the hospital, to get evaluated, to get help. He agreed. They left together. I haven't seen Daniel since. His sister texted me updates. Daniel is in a psychiatric facility. He's being treated for severe anxiety disorder and paranoid delusions. He's improving slowly. He talks about the hidden rooms like they were a sanctuary, a place where the people following him couldn't reach him. There were no people following him. just his mind creating threats. The hidden rooms enabled his illness, gave him a place to hide from imaginary dangers while avoiding real help. I decided not to sell. Daniel is gone. The house is truly mine now, but I've sealed all the hidden spaces permanently, filled them with expanding foam insulation. They can't be used by anyone ever again. The contractor said it's overkill, but I don't care. I need to know there are no voids, no spaces, no places for anyone to hide. Solid walls, solid floors, solid ceilings, no gaps, no secrets, no hidden rooms. Even with everything sealed, I still feel paranoid. I still check behind furniture, still listen for sounds in the walls. The psychological impact doesn't disappear just because the physical threat is gone. I'm in therapy dealing with it. The therapist says it's a form of trauma. My safe space was invaded. Even though Daniel didn't mean harm, the effect is the same. I was violated. My home was violated. That takes time to heal. I've become obsessed with the history of hidden rooms and secret spaces. Reading about priest holes in England, hidden rooms used by Underground Railroad, panic rooms in modern homes. Secret spaces have been part of architecture for centuries. Sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad. My house's hidden rooms were neutral, built for purposes lost to time, used by a scared man who needed sanctuary. Now, gone forever, entombed in foam. Friends ask if I regret buying this house. Sometimes I do. The easy path would have been a newer house with no history and no secrets. But this house taught me things. About vulnerability. About the mentally ill and how they survive. About how old houses hold stories we never expect. I'm keeping it, making it mine, creating new memories that will eventually overshadow the strange few months of hidden roommate. Daniel's sister visits occasionally. She's grateful I helped her brother, even though I didn't really do much. She says the hidden rooms probably saved his life. When he was at his worst, convinced danger was everywhere, those spaces kept him alive. If he'd been on the streets, he might have died. The house protected him in its way. I try to see it like that. The house wasn't my enemy. It was just old and full of secrets. Daniel wasn't my enemy either. Just a scared person using what was available to survive. But I still installed security everywhere. Cameras, alarms, motion sensors, lights on timers. I'm prepared for any future intrusions. Though rationally, what are the chances of another person finding and using hidden rooms that no longer exist? I'm safe. The house is secure. Daniel is getting help. Everything worked out as well as it could. So why do I still feel watched? Why do I still hear sounds in walls that are solid? Why do I still check the basement, expecting to find the hidden door unsealed? Trauma doesn't follow logic. My therapist says that constantly. The danger is gone, but my nervous system hasn't caught up. I'm still in fight or flight mode, still hypervigilant, still sleeping with lights on, still jumping at normal house sounds. It's getting better slowly. Some nights I sleep through without waking. Some days I don't think about Daniel in the walls. Progress is incremental, but it's happening. I've started renovating the basement finally, finishing it properly. Bright lights, fresh paint. Clear purpose as a laundry and storage area, making it the opposite of dark and mysterious, reclaiming that space from its history. The contractor who sealed the hidden rooms is doing the work. He's been respectful about the whole situation. Never makes me feel crazy for my security requests. He gets it. The house is beautiful when you ignore the history. High ceilings, original woodwork, big windows. It has good bones, as they say. I'm making it my own, choosing paint colors, updating fixtures, creating a home that reflects me instead of the previous century of occupants and their secrets. In 5 years, this will just be a weird story I tell at parties. The time I bought a house with hidden rooms and a squatter. People will be fascinated and horrified. I'll laugh about it. Maybe. If the therapy works. So, that's my story. I bought a fixer-upper and found hidden rooms someone was living in. That person was a mentally ill man who needed sanctuary. I helped reunite him with family. I sealed the rooms forever. I'm healing from the psychological impact. I'm making the house mine. It's not the home buying experience I expected, but it's the one I got. Every old house has stories. Mine has a particularly strange one. I'm adding my chapter now. Hopefully a long, peaceful, secret-free chapter that makes the previous strangeness fade into distant memory. That's the goal anyway. Some days I believe I'll get there. Other days, I'm not so sure. The neighborhood has been supportive, mostly. Word got around about what happened. Some neighbors admitted they'd seen a figure in my windows when the house was supposedly vacant. They'd thought it was maintenance or estate work. Never reported it. If they had, maybe Daniel would have been found sooner, but they had no reason to suspect someone was living there illegally. The house has always been a little mysterious. The old doctor who built it was eccentric. Neighbors have stories passed down through generations about strange happenings. None verified. Just local lore. One elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, told me she remembered the last owner. She said he was paranoid too. Always worried about break-ins, even though the neighborhood is safe. He'd installed multiple locks and security measures. She wondered now if he'd known about the hidden rooms. If maybe he'd used them himself for storage, or just liked knowing they were there. Or if his paranoia was justified, and he knew someone was using them. She said he'd mentioned feeling watched in his own home. At the time, she attributed it to him being old and lonely. Now she wonders if Daniel had been there even then. I've thought about this a lot. If Daniel was using the hidden rooms before the last owner died, that's over 2 years of living in the walls. The journal only went back 6 months, but that's just what I found. There could have been earlier journals he took with him, or destroyed. He could have been a wall dweller for years, moving between hidden rooms in this house and possibly others, living like a ghost in the infrastructure of old buildings. It's disturbing to imagine, but also sad. What kind of fear drives someone to live like that? Daniel's sister told me more about his history. He'd been a normal kid, good student, had friends and hobbies. The anxiety started in college, gradually worsening. By his late 20s, he was struggling to maintain employment or relationships. He lived alone and became increasingly isolated. The paranoia developed slowly. First, it was just general anxiety, then specific fears, then elaborate beliefs about being watched and followed. His family tried to help, but he pushed them away. Said they were part of it, or being monitored because of him. When he disappeared, they feared suicide. Finding out he was alive, even living in walls, was a relief. She asked me if I was angry at Daniel. I had to think about that. Was I? He violated my space, made me afraid in my own home, cost me money in security systems and therapy. But he was sick. His paranoia was real to him, even though the threats weren't. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He probably didn't want to scare me. He just wanted to survive. It's hard to be angry at someone for having a mental illness. I'm frustrated at the situation. But angry at Daniel specifically? Not really. More sad for him than anything. I've learned a lot about paranoid disorders through this experience. I've read articles and studies trying to understand. Paranoia can be incredibly resistant to treatment. When your mind is convinced everyone is a threat, trusting a therapist is nearly impossible. Daniel's willingness to get help after being found is actually unusual and positive. Many people in his state refuse help entirely. His sister attributes it to exhaustion. He'd been hiding for so long, he was too tired to keep doing it. Sometimes people only accept help when they've hit absolute rock bottom. The contractor who sealed the rooms made an interesting point. He said old houses attract people who need hiding spots. Homeless folks looking for shelter, people fleeing domestic violence, kids running away from bad homes. The hidden room in my basement wasn't the first secret space he'd found in old houses. He'd discovered similar situations before. People living in walls or attics or crawl spaces. It's more common than we think. We just don't talk about it because it's uncomfortable. The invisible population living in the gaps of our structures. I've become interested in hidden architecture generally. I visited a museum with a priest hole from the 1600s, a tiny space where Catholic priests would hide during persecution, barely big enough for a person to crouch. They'd stay there for days while their houses were searched. The claustrophobia would be unbearable, but it was survival. Daniel's hidden rooms were luxury in comparison. He had space to lie down, access to the whole house when I was gone. He chose that life. The priests didn't, but the psychology of hiding is similar. Fear drives people into impossible spaces. I wonder what the original doctor would think about his secret rooms being used this way. Did he imagine future scenarios where they'd shelter someone? Or were they just for his private purposes? The spiritualism angle interests me. In the early 1900s, spiritualism was huge. Seances and mediums and secret societies. Hidden rooms might have been for rituals or meetings that needed privacy, or they might have been built for more mundane reasons. Wealthy people often had secret storage for valuables. Without modern banking, you kept precious things at home. A hidden room would be perfect for that. The house has revealed other secrets during renovation. Not hidden rooms, but interesting features. There's a dumbwaiter between floors that I didn't notice initially. It's sealed up now, but it's there. There are speaking tubes in some rooms, old communication system before intercoms. There's a coal chute that connects basement to an outside entrance, now welded shut. The house is full of remnants of how people lived a century ago. Each one is a little mystery. What was this for? Who used it? Why isn't it used anymore? History layered in walls. I've documented everything for the house records. Future owners will know about the hidden rooms. They're sealed, but someone might discover them eventually if they tear down walls during their own renovation. Better they know the history than be surprised like I was. I've written down what happened with Daniel too. Not in detail that would violate his privacy, but enough to explain the sealed spaces. The house deserves its history recorded, even the uncomfortable parts. My relationship with the house has evolved. At first, it was just a property I bought. Then it became a source of fear. Now it's becoming home, despite everything. I've spent so much time here, so much energy improving it, that it's mine in a way I didn't expect. The Daniel situation is part of its story now, part of my story. We're bound together through this weird experience. I could have sold it. Plenty of people told me to. But I'm stubborn. This is my house. I'm not being driven out by ghosts of the past or fears of hidden spaces. The therapy has helped tremendously. I've learned coping strategies for the hypervigilance, grounding techniques when I start to panic, ways to challenge anxious thoughts about people in the walls. It's gotten easier to sleep. I've stopped checking every room before bed. I've accepted that the security system will alert me if there's a problem. I don't need to manually verify everything is safe. Trust in the system. Trust in the sealed rooms. Trust that Daniel is gone and getting help. Trust is hard, but it's coming back slowly. I had a housewarming party last month. First time I've had people over socially since finding the hidden rooms. It went well. friends and family throughout the house, laughter and conversation, normal party things. Nobody mentioned Daniel or the hidden rooms unless I brought it up. They were respecting my need to move past it. The house felt alive in a good way, full of people and energy and joy, not haunted by secrets, just a beautiful old house hosting a gathering. That felt like reclaiming the space in a meaningful way. I've started dating someone new. He knows about the house situation. I told him early because I didn't want secrets. He was fascinated rather than scared off. He's helped with some renovation projects. He doesn't treat the house like it's cursed or damaged. Just an old house with interesting history. His normalcy about it has helped me be more normal about it. Not everything is defined by the Daniel situation. The house is many things. That's just one story. Work has been understanding. I took some time off initially to deal with the police and contractors and security. They were supportive. Nobody made a big deal about it. Now I'm back to normal schedule and productivity. Work is actually a relief. It's somewhere I can focus on tasks that have nothing to do with hidden rooms or mentally ill squatters. Just normal job stuff. That normalcy is valuable. It reminds me that most of my life is unaffected by this situation. I've thought about reaching out to Daniel directly, but his sister advised against it. She said he's still processing everything, and contact from me might be triggering. He feels tremendous guilt about scaring me. He doesn't remember some of what happened during his worst paranoid episodes. Learning he was living in someone's walls for months is distressing to him. Eventually, maybe we'll talk. Maybe it would help both of us process. But not yet. He needs to focus on his treatment. I need to focus on my healing. We're both recovering from this strange intersection of our lives. The financial impact was significant but manageable. The security system was expensive. The therapy isn't cheap. The contractor work to find and seal all the hidden spaces added up. But I haven't had to sell at a loss. The house is still a good investment. Property values in this area continue to rise. In a few years, the weird history might even add value. People like houses with stories, as long as the stories end well. This one did. Daniel is alive and getting help. I'm safe, and making the house my own. That's a good ending, even if the journey was terrifying. I keep the journal Daniel left. I probably shouldn't. It's evidence of his mental state and not mine to keep. But I can't bring myself to destroy it, or give it away. It's a record of what happened. Proof that I'm not crazy for feeling afraid. Proof that Daniel was real, and this all actually occurred. Sometimes I flip through it, reading his confused thoughts. It's sad, but also humanizing. He wasn't a monster, just a scared person trying to survive the threats his mind created. That compassion took time to develop, but I'm glad I found it. So that's the fuller picture. I bought a house, found hidden rooms, discovered someone living there, helped them get found by family, sealed the spaces, recovered slowly, made the house mine. It's been 6 months since I found that false wall in the basement. 6 months of processing and healing and renovating. The house is transformed. So am I. We're both doing better than we were. The hidden rooms are gone. The secrets are known. The fears are fading. What remains is a beautiful old house with great bones and a strange story. My house, my story, my fresh start in a very old building. That feels right somehow. New life in old space. That's what renovation is. That's what recovery is too. Story 7. I need to share this absolute insanity because I still can't believe it happened. And my entire family thinks I'm the biggest idiot alive. I'm a 42-year-old man who works in IT and lives a pretty boring life. Or at least I thought it was boring until this whole situation spiraled completely out of control. It started about 8 months ago. I was helping my brother move some furniture, and I felt this sharp pain in my right shoulder. Not excruciating, just a sudden ache that made me stop what I was doing. I figured I'd pulled a muscle or tweaked something. I'm not as young as I used to be, and I definitely don't work out enough. I iced it that night and took some ibuprofen. The pain persisted for a few days, but it wasn't terrible. Just annoying. I could still use my arm, but certain movements hurt. Reaching overhead, lifting things, that sort of thing. After a week, it wasn't getting better, so I decided to see a doctor. Here's where I made my first mistake. Instead of going to my regular doctor, I went to one of those urgent care walk-in clinics because I didn't want to wait for an appointment. The place was busy, and the doctor who saw me seemed rushed. I told him about the shoulder pain and how it happened. He did a very quick physical examination, maybe 2 minutes total, and said it was probably a rotator cuff injury. He didn't do any imaging. No x-rays, no MRI, nothing. Just poked my shoulder a few times, asked me to move my arm in different directions, and made his diagnosis. He said rotator cuff injuries were common in men my age, especially when doing physical labor we weren't used to. He prescribed some anti-inflammatory medication and referred me to physical therapy. I should have questioned this. I should have asked for actual tests, but he was a doctor, and I trusted his expertise. Plus, the diagnosis made sense. I'd hurt my shoulder moving furniture, rotator cuff injuries are common, everything lined up. I took the referral and booked an appointment with a physical therapy clinic near my house. The physical therapist, a guy named Marcus, was young and enthusiastic. He looked at the referral from the urgent care doctor, asked me about my pain, and started designing a treatment plan. He said rotator cuff injuries could take months to heal, but with consistent therapy we'd get me back to normal. Marcus set me up with a routine of stretches and exercises, resistance band work, wall climbs, internal and external rotation exercises, all targeting the rotator cuff. Some of it hurt, but he said that was normal. No pain, no gain. We were breaking up scar tissue and strengthening the damaged muscles. I went to physical therapy twice a week. Each session was about 45 minutes of exercises under Marcus's supervision, plus homework exercises I was supposed to do daily at home. Marcus was great. Super encouraging, always positive, made the sessions almost fun despite the discomfort. After a month, my shoulder actually felt worse. I mentioned this to Marcus, and he said that was totally normal. Sometimes things get worse before they get better. We were really working the damaged tissue, and that caused temporary inflammation. He adjusted my exercises and told me to keep pushing through. So I did. I kept going twice a week. I did my homework exercises religiously. I bought special equipment for home use. Resistance bands, a door anchor system, a foam roller. I was committed to healing properly. Around month 2, I asked Marcus when I should start feeling better. He said recovery timelines varied, but most people saw significant improvement by month 3 or 4. Some rotator cuff injuries took 6 months or more to fully heal. He said I was making progress even if it didn't feel like it. The thing is, I wasn't making progress. My range of motion wasn't improving. The pain wasn't decreasing. If anything, I was developing new pains in my shoulder from all the exercises. But Marcus kept saying this was normal. This was part of the process. Trust the program. I trusted him. He was the professional. He'd treated hundreds of shoulder injuries. He showed me charts and diagrams of rotator cuff anatomy. He explained the biomechanics of what we were doing. He seemed to know exactly what he was talking about. My insurance covered 20 physical therapy sessions per year. After I'd used those up, Marcus said I really needed to continue treatment. The injury wasn't healed, and stopping now would be a setback. So I started paying out of pocket. $120 per session twice a week. That's over $900 a month. My wife thought I was crazy to spend that much, but I said my health was worth it. I couldn't live with chronic shoulder pain. Better to invest in proper treatment now than deal with problems forever. She reluctantly agreed. Month 3 came and went. Month 4, month 5. My shoulder hurt just as much as it did on day 1. Maybe more. I was getting frustrated, and Marcus could tell. He said some injuries were just stubborn. He'd seen cases that took a full year to resolve. We needed to stay patient and consistent. He also suggested I might benefit from dry needling, a technique where they stick acupuncture-like needles into the muscle to release tension. It cost an extra $50 per keyed-in session, but he said it could really accelerate healing. I agreed to try it. The dry needling hurt like hell. Marcus would stick these needles deep into my shoulder muscle and then manipulate them. I'd feel these intense twitches and spasms. He said that was the muscle releasing. It felt like torture, but I endured it because I wanted my shoulder to heal. Around month 5, my wife insisted I get a second opinion. She said we'd spent thousands of dollars, and I wasn't any better. Something didn't add up. I was defensive at first. I didn't want to admit that maybe all this time and money had been wasted. But she was right to be concerned. I made an appointment with an orthopedic specialist. A real one at a hospital, not an urgent care clinic. The first thing the orthopedist did was order an MRI. He said you can't properly diagnose a rotator cuff injury without imaging. I felt stupid for not knowing this sooner. I got the MRI done and went back for the results. The orthopedist pulled up the images on his computer and examined them carefully. Then he turned to me with a confused look and asked why I thought I had a rotator cuff tear. I explained the whole story. The furniture moving, the urgent care visit, the diagnosis, the 6 months of physical therapy. He listened patiently and then told me something that made my brain short-circuit. My rotator cuff was completely fine. Intact, healthy, no damage whatsoever. The MRI showed no tears, no inflammation, no structural problems at all in my rotator cuff. I sat there stunned. I asked if maybe the MRI was wrong. He said no. MRIs are very accurate for soft tissue injuries. My rotator cuff was definitely not injured and probably never had been. So what was causing my shoulder pain? The orthopedist did a thorough physical examination, much more detailed than the urgent care doctor had done. He manipulated my shoulder, tested my range of motion, felt around my neck and upper back. His diagnosis: cervical radiculopathy. Basically a pinched nerve in my neck that was causing referred pain in my shoulder. This is apparently very common and frequently misdiagnosed as a shoulder injury, because that's where people feel the pain. The treatment for cervical radiculopathy is completely different from rotator cuff injury treatment. In fact, some of the exercises Marcus had been having me do for my rotator cuff were probably making the nerve issue worse by strengthening muscles that were pulling on my spine. I had spent 6 months and over $7,000 treating an injury I didn't have while making my actual problem worse. I was furious. I called the urgent care clinic and tried to complain about the misdiagnosis, but they said the doctor had documented that he'd recommended a follow-up with my primary care physician for imaging and further evaluation. He'd covered himself legally even though he'd sent me down the wrong path. I called Marcus and told him about the MRI results. He was shocked. He said he'd been treating based on the referral diagnosis and had no reason to question it. He apologized, but also said he wasn't responsible for the initial diagnosis. He'd just been doing his job based on the information provided. Technically, he was right. He's not qualified to diagnose. He treats based on doctor referrals. But 6 months? 6 months of no improvement, and he never once suggested I get imaging done to confirm the diagnosis. That seemed like a massive oversight. I looked into filing complaints or lawsuits, but I didn't really have a case. The urgent care doctor had technically documented the recommendation for follow-up. Marcus had worked within his scope of practice. I'd consented to all the treatment. Nobody had technically done anything wrong, even though everything had gone wrong. The real kicker? The treatment for cervical radiculopathy is relatively simple. The orthopedist referred me to a different physical therapist who specialized in spine issues. 3 sessions of neck-focused therapy, and my shoulder pain decreased by 70%. 3 sessions versus 6 months. The new physical therapist explained that my posture was the root cause. I sit at a desk all day with my head forward and shoulders rounded. Classic IT worker posture. This compresses the cervical spine and can pinch nerves that radiate down into the shoulder. The treatment involved postural correction, neck stretches, and ergonomic changes to my workspace. Within a month, my shoulder pain was almost completely gone, not from 6 months of rotator cuff exercises, but from fixing my desk setup and doing some basic neck stretches. I felt like such an idiot. I'd spent $7,000, 6 months of my life, hours every week doing exercises that didn't help, all because I didn't question the initial diagnosis or ask for proper testing. My wife was surprisingly understanding, even though she had every right to say I told you so. She just hugged me and said at least we knew now, and I could finally heal properly. My friends were less kind. When I told them the story, they laughed their asses off. One friend said I was the only person who could turn a pinched nerve into a 6-month saga and $7,000 mistake. Another said I should get honorary medical degree for all the physical therapy I'd endured. The worst part was telling my family. My brother, the one I'd been helping move furniture when this all started, felt terrible. He offered to pay me back the $7,000 since technically it was his fault I got hurt in the first place. I told him not to be ridiculous. None of this was his fault. It was my own stupidity for not getting proper testing. My parents couldn't understand how I'd gone so long without questioning things. My dad said back in his day they didn't have all this fancy physical therapy. You just rested injuries and they healed. Maybe he had a point. I tried to look at it as a learning experience. I learned to always get imaging for injury diagnoses. I learned to question things when treatment isn't working. I learned that just because someone is a medical professional doesn't mean they're infallible. I also learned that medical billing in this country is insane. I requested itemized bills from Marcus's clinic for tax purposes and discovered I'd been charged for all kinds of things I didn't realize were separate line items. $15 for the use of a resistance band, $20 for hot pack therapy that just involved Marcus putting a heated pad on my shoulder for 10 minutes, $10 for exercise instruction that was literally just him telling me what to do. The whole system is designed to extract maximum money from patients and insurance companies, and I'd participated in it willingly for 6 months without questioning any of it. I did get some money back. My insurance company was not happy when they found out about the misdiagnosis. They launched an investigation into the urgent care clinic and ended up getting a partial refund for the physical therapy sessions they'd covered. I didn't get my out-of-pocket money back, but at least the insurance company recouped some of their costs. Marcus actually got in trouble with his clinic management. Apparently, they have protocols for when patients aren't responding to treatment. He should have consulted with a supervising physician after 8 weeks of no improvement. He didn't follow protocol, and the clinic suspended him for 2 weeks without pay. I felt a little bad about that, but also not really. 6 months, man. The urgent care doctor faced no consequences whatsoever. He's still working there, probably misdiagnosing people every day. I left a scathing review online, but it got buried among hundreds of other reviews. Turns out lots of people have bad experiences at urgent care, but they're so convenient that people keep going anyway. I'm fully healed now. My shoulder hasn't hurt in months. I got a standing desk and a proper ergonomic chair. I take breaks to stretch my neck every hour. I do the simple exercises the spine specialist taught me. Total time investment. Maybe 5 minutes a day. Total cost after the initial consultations, $0. compared to twice weekly physical therapy sessions for 6 months costing $7,000 plus hours of my time. The contrast is absurd. I've become evangelical about advocating for yourself in medical settings. I tell everyone who will listen to always get imaging before accepting an injury diagnosis. Ask questions if treatment isn't working. Get second opinions. Don't just trust that medical professionals know what they're doing. Because here's the thing I learned. The medical system is full of people who are just doing their jobs, following protocols, working within their scope, and nobody is really taking responsibility for ensuring the overall picture makes sense. The urgent care doctor diagnosed quickly to move on to the next patient. Marcus treated based on the referral without questioning it. Everyone did their job technically correctly, but I still ended up with the wrong treatment for 6 months. My wife now jokes that I have an honorary doctorate in shoulder anatomy, given how much time I spent learning about rotator cuff injuries I didn't have. She printed out a fake diploma and hung it in my office. It says, Doctor of Imaginary Rotator Cuff Studies. My coworkers found out about the story, and now whenever I complain about anything, they ask if I've gotten it properly diagnosed, or if I'm just going to assume what's wrong and spend 6 months treating the wrong thing. Fair point. The most embarrassing part was running into Marcus at the grocery store about a month after everything came out. We made eye contact across the produce section. He looked mortified. I considered just walking away, but instead, I went over and told him I didn't blame him, that the system had failed both of us. He seemed relieved, and we actually had a nice conversation. Turns out Marcus had been feeling terrible about the whole thing. He'd questioned his own abilities as a therapist. He'd reviewed all my session notes, trying to figure out what he'd missed. He'd taken additional continuing education courses on differential diagnosis and red flags for referral. So, I guess some good came out of my stupidity. Marcus became a better physical therapist, who now questions referrals more carefully. I became a more informed patient, who advocates for proper testing. And I have a great story that makes people laugh at parties. The $7,000, though, that still stings. That's a nice vacation. That's several months of retirement savings. That's a lot of money to spend learning a lesson I should have learned for free. My financial advisor nearly had a heart attack when she saw the physical therapy charges on my medical spending summary. She asked what on earth I'd been doing. When I explained, she just shook her head and said this is why she tells clients to fully fund their health savings accounts. You never know when you're going to spend months treating an injury you don't have. I've become that annoying person who interrogates medical professionals now. When my wife went to the doctor for back pain last month, I made her get x-rays before accepting any diagnosis. When my friend mentioned he was starting physical therapy for knee pain, I grilled him about whether he'd gotten an MRI. Everyone tells me I'm overcompensating, but I don't care. I'm not letting anyone I know fall into the same trap I did. The other day, I got a letter in the mail from Marcus's clinic. They're implementing new protocols requiring consultation with referring physicians if patients don't show improvement within 6 weeks. They're also requiring therapists to document and communicate any concerns about diagnosis accuracy. Too little too late for me, but hopefully it helps future patients. I also got a survey from the urgent care clinic asking about my experience. I filled it out in excruciating detail, explaining exactly what happened and how their rushed diagnosis cost me 6 months and $7,000. I don't know if anyone will read it, but at least I tried. The whole experience has made me cynical about healthcare in a way I wasn't before. I used to trust that the system worked, that professionals knew what they were doing, that if you followed medical advice, you'd get better. Now I know that the system is fragmented and profit-driven, and nobody is really responsible for the big picture. But I'm also grateful in a weird way. I'm grateful I didn't actually have a torn rotator cuff. I'm grateful it wasn't something more serious. I'm grateful I can afford to lose $7,000, even though it sucks. Some people can't, and would have just lived with chronic pain rather than spending that money. And I'm grateful my wife didn't divorce me for being such an idiot. That might be the biggest miracle of all. So yeah, I spent 6 months going to physical therapy for a torn rotator cuff I never actually had. I strengthened muscles that didn't need strengthening, paid thousands of dollars for treatment I didn't need, and endured dry, needling torture for no reason, all because I went to urgent care instead of my regular doctor, trusted a rushed diagnosis without imaging, and didn't question things when treatment wasn't working. Learn from my mistakes, people. Get proper testing. Ask questions. Trust, but verify. And if you're paying out of pocket for medical treatment that isn't helping, stop and get a second opinion before you're out $7,000. My shoulder feels great, though. My neck is what needed the treatment all along. Who knew? Definitely not the urgent care doctor. Definitely not Marcus. And definitely not me for 6 very expensive months.